Ah,
Anyway, thank you. And you guys, so yeah, Thad, you did a great job. And I know you said like that's just so much, so many people have so many things they want to learn. And so he really took initiative and said, why don't I just set up some very sequential trainings throughout this next part of the year for your department? And then we talked about how people have different activities, IEPs, and things on different days. So he offered to make this recorded series so people can either go back and review, or if they couldn't make it, they can go in and kind of hear and see what we all talked about. And then following each training, and there's going to be, I think, 5 different ones, I think, or 4 or 5. The next week, more or less, he's going to do a question and answer drop-in type Zoom. So once you get the basic information, you're playing around with it, you might say, I still can't figure out how to make it, that. You can pop into that next week with the same topic and just bring your questions or a project you're working on if we get into something like forms or other things. And that way you have kind of a 2-part series. If the first part was overview and learning, you have that week to kind of start playing with it and then bring your questions or your project back and get, I don't want to say hand holding, but kind of. That's what I did last year and it worked great. So thank you so much, Thad. You're awesome. We appreciate your time.
thank you. I appreciate you organizing this, and I love the spreadsheet that you set up. And thank you so much for everyone being here today to come learn about Google Drive. And let's go ahead and just jump right in by going straight to my Google Drive. All right, welcome to Google Drive. This is my sandy.net Google domain uh, Google account. And I know this is part of the school district's sandy.net Google domain because I see my picture over here. And when I hover on it, it shows that it has my sandy.net email address. So to be clear, everyone in the school district who's an employee has a sandy.net email address. And because you have that email address, you have access to all the Google suite of apps, including Google Drive, which you can kind of think of Google Drive is like a desktop of your computer. So, when you turn on your computer before you open up anything, once it's all booted up, you see your desktop. Some of us have pictures of family, some of us have, whatever pictures there, a bunch of files and things like that. It's just a place where you can organize things and find things quickly, along with lots of shortcuts and all of that. Well, that's kind of what Google Drive is, except it lives in the cloud. And so let's just go over a few terms here. And it's important to understand exactly how Google works, because when something weird happens, when something strange is occurring, when something is different than it was before, you'll know that you're not crazy. It's just part and parcel to the fact that Google Drive resides in the cloud. So the first thing I want you to notice is on the screen is I have all of these tabs up here. You'll recognize, tabs. This is part of a browser. In fact, it's the Google Chrome browser. And if I take my little yellow cursor here and go straight down, you can see I'm kind of hovering over on the taskbar at the bottom. I've got the Google Chrome icon there. It's red and yellow and green with a blue dot and a white circle around it. That's Google Chrome. Anytime you're using anything in Google, whether it's Drive, Docs, Sheets, Forms, Slides, anything Google, always use Google Chrome. And the reason is, and keep that browser updated. The Google Chrome browser allows all of the features to work in whatever Google program you're in. And again, today we're going to be talking about specifically Google Drive. But if you're in Firefox, if you're in a Microsoft product, if you're anywhere outside of Google, there will be features that either A, won't show up on a drop-down menu, they won't exist at all, or they'll be grayed out, not allowing you access to them. And the reason is very simple, is that Google Chrome is optimized to work, basically just programmed to work perfectly with all of the other Google products. So always make sure that you're in Google Chrome. So here we are in our browser. This browser we see it on our computer. I can move my mouse around and I can stroke the keyboard, the keys on the keyboard. I can interact with it, but really nothing is happening on my computer. And I know it's a little bit confusing, especially if we don't do a lot of cloud computing, but it's all happening in the cloud. So what is the cloud? The cloud is a euphemism for the internet. What is the internet? Well, through connections that we have through Wi-Fi or just an Ethernet connection, we can connect to the Google server farms. That's where my Google Drive is stored. That's where your Google Drive is stored. And it all goes through the sandy.net Google domain. And I'll explain a little bit more about the relationship between that and Google. But think of a Costco-sized warehouse. Those are pretty big. Multiply that by 4. Now put in top-of-the-line computers, floor to ceiling, and you have one of about 10 or 12 Google server farms that they have all over the world. And every time I click on something, in this case, my Google Drive, or if I'm typing in a name for a file or something like that, every stroke of the keyboard, every click of the mouse is going across the internet at near the speed of light. Yeah, you heard that correctly. That's pretty fast. Little digital packets of ones and zeros are going back and forth to the Google server farm. So all of the stuff that you see on my screen right here is recorded and part of those servers' hard drives, if you will. So that's kind of interesting. Well, because of that, there's a few interesting things that happen. One, you may have noticed that whether it's Google Docs or Google Sheets or Forms or whatever, you never have to click a save button. In the olden days, we were working on a Word document, and by golly, we've solved all of San Diego Unified's issues and concerns. We just wrote out all those solutions, and we forgot to save it, and the power goes out, and you just lost your Microsoft Word document, or maybe it was on an Excel spreadsheet. It disappeared. If you didn't save it, it's gone. Yikes. Well, in Google, that never happens. And the reason is because, as we said before, every stroke of the keyboard, every click of the mouse at near the speed of light is, by virtue of your browser and your internet connection, is going to those Google server farms, and it's being loaded on there, and you're interacting with it going back and forth. So one of the small problems with that is we've all seen times when internet traffic is peaked out at the district and things are moving slowly. So if I go down here and right now my Google Drive is suggesting that maybe I want to interact with Diana Peterson, yay, and I click on this and nothing happens for 1 or 3 seconds, or maybe 6 or 60 seconds, or maybe a couple of minutes. What's going on? It could just mean that the internet traffic is such that it's just moving slower. Now let's just talk about the sandy.net Google domain. You probably know this already. At San Diego Unified, we are protected by a firewall. And if you've ever tried to load on a new program or something like that onto your desktop computer or your laptop inside San Diego Unified, sometimes we have problems with that, or it doesn't allow us to do certain things. That's because the San Diego Unified firewall is up and trying to protect us all. The sandy.net Google domain is exactly what it sounds like. It's a place for all of our Google stuff through the district. And just like Google, the very smart men and women engineers at Google can start to change some of the features that we see in Google Drive here, maybe the way that things show up. In fact, look, I've got a banner up here that says something. Let's see what it says. This is Google sharing information with us. It says, better spam filters. Now Drive automatically moves suspicious files shared with you to spam. And if we look over here, oh, there it is. We have a spam folder. And so this is something that Google came up with. I don't even remember when, probably over the summertime, if I had to guess back when. Things change all the time. There's a number of things that have changed since the last time I actually used Google Drive. And so we will see changes like that happening all the time. Sometimes we'll get a banner letting us know something has happened. And if we want to get rid of that banner, we can do that. And so it's letting us know that the very smart men and women at Google, the engineers, are adding new features all the time, or stated differently, they're trying to come up with ways to make all of this work better for us. And so you may or may not know this, but there's an entire community out there, and Google supports this, where people can complain and say, why does Drive always do this or it does that? It would sure be much better if it had this feature or that feature. I'm going to give you an example. This right here is something brand new since our last meeting with the with all of you psychologists for the district. And so you may have recalled when I was rushing through all things Google Drive, I said, well, right now I have mine in the grid mode. What is that? Well, it's like blocks like this. The files are represented in these little tiles, if you will. And down here, all of the files, whether it's a Google form or a Google Doc or even a Microsoft Word, it's in these like little tiles where I can kind of get a preview and see what it is. I'm more visual, and so I like to be able to see things. Well, that's in the grid mode, the grid layout, and we can see it's kind of blue or blue-gray right here, and there's a checkbox there. The other option is to be in list layout. Well, it was confusing just a week ago because whatever you were in this case, I'm always in grid layout, the icon that was up here was just this one, which could then lead you to believe that you're in list layout. And when you click on it, then it would look like the grid one, not because you're in grid, but because that would be another option. So how smart were they? And probably all the users came up with this idea, and Google finally said, yeah, okay, we'll fix it. They give us both, and they show us a check mark as to which one we're using. And I will click on this in just a little bit once I just get done explaining a little bit more about how Google works. So that's an example. And there's a few other things like the spam thing that are changing all the time, like activity and workspace, and priority came out about a year and a half ago, where the very smart men and women at Google are adding features, changing things, making it hopefully better for all of us and our user experience, so things are easier for us to understand and be able to navigate around and use this. Now, I mentioned the sandy.net Google domain. We have a sandy.net Google domain administrator. He's a gentleman in the IT department, and his job is to decide if these new features can be employed. A lot of them just happen automatically, but if there's something that the district doesn't want us to have access to, they can remove it. All right. And right here next to it, we see this, we call this the apps waffle. It's basically just a click to be able to place a button you can go to see some of the different apps that are in here. If I want to get the calendar real fast or go to Docs or Sheets, I can do all that stuff from right in here. Right here in the apps waffle, we'll call it. Look around here, you're not going to see Gmail. I can keep scrolling down and Gmail's not going to show up. Well, that's interesting. I'm in Drive, and you said that the Google men and women engineers can change this at any time and add stuff to it and all that. Why on earth would they not have Gmail in here? Well, they do for everyone else in the world. But our district administrator, because we're heavily invested in Microsoft as well through networks and different things in the district, they have decided that they want us to use what? Microsoft Outlook. And so all of us have to use that. And they actually don't make available Gmail for us to use. And I'm going to give you a case in point. So again, you see the picture of just me right there. And if I hover over it, it says sandy.net. That's my email address. This is part of the sandy.net Google domain. If I go up here to my personal Drive account and click on that, you'll see a picture of my wife and I. And if I hover over it, it has my yahoo.com email address. All right. And if I click on the Google Apps waffle there, well, look, there's Gmail front and center. So that's an example of it. The other thing I just wanted to point out, which is a very positive regarding our account with the district, and again, I'm in my personal one, and we know that because it has a picture of my wife and I instead of just me, and it's associated with my Yahoo email account. If I look down here in storage, it says, hey, you've used 3.44 gigabytes of 15 free gigabytes used. And it says, hey, you want to buy more? And it's always trying to get you to buy more storage. So if I click away from this and go back to our sandy.net one, again, this is my Google Drive with sandy.net. I know that because there's the picture of just me. If we look down here in storage, it says I've used up 27.2 gigabytes. Presumably at 15 gigabytes, I'd have to buy more. But our district Google administrator has decided that, hey, we need to not put caps on storage use by our employees so that they can have all of the files they need. For example, the reason why mine is so high is because I do a lot of videos, as we talked about before, and those videos can be a gigabyte or two, depending on the length. And imagine if I've got 50 or 100 videos, I'm going to be storing a lot of stuff here in Drive. And so our network administrator has made it so that we could put as much in there as we want. So just a quick recap. The only way you're going to be able to access your Drive and be able to interact with it and have it all just being recorded in the server farms is through our browser. In this case, the only browser we should be using is the Google Chrome browser so that all things will work. All of the features, all of the drop-down menus, all of that. And where is our account actually stored? It's actually at the Google server farms. Every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard is being recorded at near the speed of light. Is going back and forth and being recorded at those Google server farms on the hard drive. And in case you were wondering, if one of those server farms gets taken out by an asteroid or a meteorite or something like that, it's okay because the memory is stored on redundant. It might be my Drive account might be on 3 or 4 different Google server farms. So if one gets destroyed or stops working for some reason, it's still there. In other words, it's always there. What's the biggest benefit of that? If I have all of my files and folders here and all this stuff that's very important, and my computer stops working or whatever, it doesn't matter. I get a new computer, and anywhere in the world with an internet connection, I can do cloud computing. If I know my credentials, I have my employee ID and my password, I can then access my sandy.net Google account, and all of my stuff will be there. And if something happens to that computer, I just get another computer and the same thing, because it's always in the cloud. It's always there. But again, remember, things will change. I've gone away in the morning from a Google Forms class and came back for an afternoon Google Forms class back in the COVID days, and the entire user interface up here had changed over lunchtime. And so just know that the very smart men and women, Google engineers, are changing things all the time to make it better for us, presumably. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what they're doing. But once in a while, it gets confusing to us because we see new things or something that we saw before isn't there. It means it's likely somewhere else. And when you see the changes, like this one here, it will actually make more sense to you and think, oh, that was smart. And again, they do that from feedback from the Google community at large. And so the other thing to consider is that also some things can get changed by our Google administrator, like the example of Gmail. They can eliminate that from our ability to use it because they want us to use, in this case, Microsoft Outlook, so that they can have that all recorded on their servers. All right, so that's kind of the gist of how Google works. Now let's talk about Drive. You heard me mention before that this is kind of like a desktop. This is where you can have, as you see here, a bunch of folders, and then all the files are down here. And if we want to know what kind of file it is, we just look up in the corner and we can see that these are PDFs. PDFs are an Adobe product, but Google allows us to not only have Adobe products listed in Drive and be able to interact with those and whatnot, it also allows us to do Microsoft ones. Here's a Microsoft Word document. And we can just look at these icons. With a little bit of practice, we can get used to what all these are. There's a Google form, there's a a Google Doc, and then a Microsoft Word document, so on and so forth. And here's a spreadsheet, here's a slide, here's some PDFs. And so here is a place where I can keep all of my folders and files. And again, this user interface, my Google Drive, is going to change and evolve because of the engineers at Google, as well as our administrator here for the district. And so we're going to go over all of these things, and we're going to touch on each one and explain the benefits of having things set up in a certain way. And just real quick, since I called this kind of like our desktop, I just wanted to show you what my desktop looks like real quick. And yes, this is a multi-generational picture that I have here. There's great grandma, grandma, my daughter, and my granddaughter. And then you can see I've got a bunch of folders with files in it, and then just some files in general and folders with other folders and files in it. And it's just a place where I have some things. I'll leave it kind of like that right now. This is my desktop of my hard drive. All of the things that you saw on there are actually part of my desktop computer on the hard drive. All right. But everything that you see in your Google Drive, again, is stored in the cloud. Okay, so that's the basis of that. So the next thing that we need to understand is our many options of how to display the stuff on our Google Drive. So we had talked about this before right up here, grid layout versus list layout. And I'm going to click on that in just a moment. But I want you to see down here where we have the option to have our folders and then the files that are beneath them ordered by name, and in this case, ascending order. And if I hover over that, it says, hey, you want to reverse it? So I could make it in descending order. I prefer to have it by name in alphanumeric ordering. What is that? Well, here we see there's a dot in the front, that's a period. And then we see some numbers. And if we observe this, we see the numbers are getting larger as we go to the right. And then we see our alphabet. There's some A's. And then I don't have anything with the B, but I have some C's to G all the way. And if we keep on going, we should see, where the heck did my folder go with a Z on it? I don't see it. I must have moved that folder and I wasn't thinking. But anyway, we can see that it's going up in ascending order. And so whether it's a period or a comma or a question mark or something like that, those things come first, followed by numbers, and then they get higher and higher, and then the alphabet starts and it goes across this way. And if I look down here at my files, I can see that they're the same way. And let me make sure that something is looking a little bit odd today. And this happens when you come back and you're looking at your Google Drive. That's what I was talking about before. Because they change things, sometimes your screen will change and then things are behaving a little bit differently. But we're going to talk about the ways that we can control it. Let's just take a look and see what our other options are here. All right, so they have the option by share date. By name is where I have it in ascending order. If I want to switch it so the Z's come up here at the top and then the numbers and then the punctuation marks go down here, I could switch that order right there. We also have the choice of last modified. Let me move that over so I can make sure I see it all. Last modified by me, last opened by me. These are ways to organize this stuff, but I promise you, if you're new to this, and even if you're not, by name in ascending order is going to be easiest, because when you make a new folder or you add a new file, you're going to be able to find it because of your understanding of the alphanumeric ordering. And but we do have other options that are in there. All right. So again, the periods, numbers, alphabet, ascending order. That's the way we have it. And it's both for the folders that you see here as well as the files. And so now would be a good time to take a look at this. And so here is the list layout view. And if I click on that, we still see the suggested tiles that are up here, people that I've worked with recently on different things. And we see, again, a list of all of the folders. Oh, now I know what's going on. I'm in shared with me. Holy cow. I apologize for that. Here is my Drive desktop, but I'm going to go back to where I was. And so there's the other end of this. Sometimes things look a little bit strange because we have clicked on something, and if we haven't changed it back to the regular view, we're going to be a little bit confused, and I apologize. We're going to be talking about this breadcrumb trail here, and if I had looked up here, it would have said something different. But now by clicking here, I've reset this, and now I see I've got my ... files and all that, and then some numbers getting larger, and then all the way to the end, there's my one with a Z. And so now we see the other files that are down here, and we see in the alphanumeric ordering, it's all the punctuation marks, followed by numbers. There's 2, then a 3, it goes up to a 10, 11, and eventually we get down to the ABCs here somewhere. There's some A's, and then the B's start happening, and so on and so forth. There we go. So with this order in the grid mode, we see that we have these tiles that we can look at. It's easy to understand that this is a folder because we actually see the little folder icon that's there. And again, you can kind of get a preview of what these different files are down here.
Dad, I have a question.
Absolutely.
Diana, it's Diana. Okay, so in terms of organizing your drive, like I did color code mine and did the little dots and all that. But one thing that trips a lot of us up is, yes, it looks really nice with the folders. And then when you scroll down to individual files, I'm assuming all those files that you're showing us as you scroll down a little bit are not in a folder. These are like training files, because this is for me, like, can become a mess. If I don't put it in a folder and I just make a separate file, is that why you see those individual files, which would take like a really long time to figure out where is my
That's a great question. And I did a test on this several years ago, and I'm not aware that it's actually changed. But when it says, well, if you're in your drive, and this is important to look at this breadcrumb trail, and it says my drive, If I go down to shared with me, well, we can see we're in shared with me. And I was looking at this, I'm like, wait a minute, where's my Z one? Because I forgot that I had looked at this. The suggested is still there. So that kind of made me think I was where I was supposed to be, but I wasn't. We see that all the other stuff is there. We could see this little gray blue box around it. So I know that that's how I ultimately figured it out. But my understanding is that all of these files here represent all of the files that I have. And so and they're in alphanumeric order. So watch my little elevator car here. This is what goes up and down as I like try to scroll. And so I'm going to scroll down, watch what happens to this. As I get to the bottom, it gets smaller and it's actually loading more. And if I keep going and it loads more, I've got about 10,000 files that are here. I know that some of these files are actually in folders. And so to answer your question, to my knowledge, and I tested this out, it would take several minutes for me to try and test it out right now, but to my knowledge, those are just a list, if you will, in this case, the little icon tiles. Those are all the files that exist anywhere in my drive. And they could very well be inside one of these folders or inside of a folder, inside of a folder, inside of a folder, and so on. They just happen to be listed down here as well. So it's kind of like they're in two different places. And to know that, I can go to one of these like this one. I can right click on it. And I love that they changed the shortcut menu. They actually made it smaller so that it doesn't disappear off your screen. So let's go look at organize and file information, details. I'm trying to find where it says its location. And I'm kind of jumping around here, but the idea is that it will tell me what folder it's in, and we can take a look at that yesterday when we do this information thing, but I don't want to jump too far ahead right now. But the idea is that
I looked at mine and I see what you're saying is the folders are there. And then as you go below it, all kinds of files are down below. And mine's that way too. It has tons of them. So I guess that is, I never realized that because I just usually try to think, where is that document I made in what folder and what did I call it? But if you remember kind of the name you're looking for, I guess you could type it in and it might pull it up differently, right? If you just search for it, if you can't remember like what file did I put it in?
Yeah, if you're trying to figure out what folder it's in or trying to figure out where it is, I will just tell you that search has gotten so much better just in the last couple of years. And I noticed this morning, just practicing with this, that there's even additional helps to try and help you find that. But you're right. If you were just trying to find a file that was presumably in one of these folders, but you can't remember which one, if you don't know the name of it, even having this in alphanumeric ordering isn't going to help you, because if you remember your file starts with an N, you might have 50 files that start with an N and you'll be scrolling through trying to find the N's to begin with. And then once you get there, then you got all these different ones to look at. That would be a very difficult way to find something like that. But we'll get to the search thing. We'll do that towards the end, and we'll show just how powerful the search is. Because even if you don't remember the name of it, if you remember just a word from the name, or if you happen to know it's a PDF, you can just look for PDFs. If you know it's just like a Google Doc, then you can just look in Google Docs. If you know it wasn't from you or it was made by Sharon Peterson, then I can say, then find all the Google Docs that are from Sharon Peterson. I can narrow it down that way. Or if I'm just looking for ones that I've created, so on and so forth. That's what we can do in search. We're going to do that towards the end. But that's a great question. They're all here. And it's kind of interesting that they are all here, because this is, if we, like most people, we have thousands of these. And if you've been in the district for a while and people sharing stuff with you and you're creating new stuff, you're going to have so many files. And so I probably have an order of several thousand, if not 5 or 10,000. I don't know, because I've been doing this for probably 8 or 9 years and just collecting stuff from, different parts of the district, people just sending me stuff, whatever. And I have all these files that are here. So that's not the best way to look for it. And we'll do that search thing as we get towards the end. But the point that I wanted to make was that you can have two different ways to see it. And now that we are in Drive, if I want to switch this from its grid view, which is what we're in now, and if I hover over it, it's going to say grid layout, and I want to switch it to list layout, it's going to have the same order of my folders and my files, but with a little bit different information. Let's just take a look real quick. So I still have the alphanumeric ordering where the periods start first, and then it's a little bit small on the screen. I apologize for that. And then we start with the numbers 2020, 2023, and then the A's, the B's, the C's, and then it goes right up to the Z at the end. And you can see the icons here that these are folders. And then we have the files. And if you're wondering why I have question marks on the names of files, when I'm experimenting with something, to know that I can throw it out later, I will oftentimes just put something like a bunch of question marks or whatever. And I know it's not anything serious. It's just something I was experimenting with. And so it also, I leave them there because it serves to show, the ordering of this. So again, here's all of my files. Happens to have the information about the owner, last modified. Look at that. So we can actually change the orders of all this if it's, to try and find something or whatever. This is kind of like a mini version of the search. And this is something that's new that they've added on, is that when you're trying to look for something, in addition to search and drive, you have these other parameters that you can use to search. And if I go down to the shared with me, you have the same things here. The type, well, what is it? Is it a PDF? Is it a doc? Is it a spreadsheet? Well, who are the people that is, just type in the names, and it gives us some of the last people that I've worked with, whatever. What about modify? Was it modified in the last 7 days? Was it, a year ago, 3 years ago, whatever? We can start to search that way. This is in addition to the search that's up here. And so if we go down to like even the trash can, we can see that we can search through there if we happen to have a whole bunch of there. And then storage, all the different things that we have in storage, the same thing. If we're trying to find something, it just gives us all these different parameters for finding something. So again, this is something that was added not too long ago. I couldn't put an exact time on it because I'm using this stuff all the time and I'm not really paying attention to that, but it's been within the last month or three, I would say, maybe a little bit longer. And so whichever part you're at, I'm clicking up here just so you know, that's one of the fastest ways to get back to your drive. And we see that kind of follows us around, in addition to being able to search up here. So anyhow, so my point was just at this point was explain the difference between list layout and grid view. And we can see that it's still in alphanumeric ordering, and we see it's by name here, and then it's in ascending order. And if we want to change that, we can. And if we want to click on it and make some other changes, we can. We have all these different parameters that we can change. But when you do that, it's for every folder over here. So if I change, if I want it to be descending order, or if I get in the share with me, it's going to be descending. If I go to start or recent, or not recent, but the other ones, it's going to be in descending order. So just remember this for every window that you can open up to look inside your drive, whatever you set this to be, and I'm just going to go back to grid view because I happen to like that better. It's right over here. Whatever you set this to be, then it's going to be like that in any one of these other folders that you're looking for, except for perhaps the recent one, just because that's ordered by date. So since we're here, actually, I'm going to go back to here. So let's just talk about the way this is listed. So this is suggested right now. So it says, hey, you edited this yesterday. Is this something? This is where we have all of our classes that people can then click on the blue link and then sign up in ERO, which is now called Professional Learning, and sign up for that. Here's the Psychologist spreadsheet that you had created that I had opened earlier today. And so it's suggesting a few things. This used to be called recent at one point. Let's see, what was it? I can't remember what it was called. It might have just still been suggested or whatever, but this is what we use for a recent. And somebody suggested, hey, why don't you actually have, since only like 4 show up here, why don't you actually have a whole category called recent? And so they created this. And again, I'm just guessing, but maybe it was a year ago, 2 years ago, I can't remember, but this showed up. And yeah, it's as easy as what you think it is. Here's today. Here's something that I was looking at earlier this week, older than that. And if I keep scrolling down, it's just going to keep putting up all of the different things that I've used in the order of time, going backwards, starting off with today. So that's pretty helpful. So if you know it was today or yesterday or last week, then that's another way for you to find it, because you were asking about how to find something before. And so they changed it. And so now they just have the suggested thing up here. And what are they suggesting? It's just the algorithm is just saying, hey, well, these are things that you click on most often or most recently, and it will just throw up a suggestion up there. If you don't want to see suggested, there's a way to get rid of that in the settings, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. But generally, you're going to have your suggested here at the top, and then your folders, and then your files. And again, if I go to the shared with me, and we'll be bouncing around to a few of these places, you still see the suggested is there. And we still see the folders, and we can see this little icon in there of the little person, which means it's shared. These are ones that have been shared with me. And then it's followed by the files. And again, these are in order, alphanumeric ordering, because that's how I have it set up at the beginning. All right, so that was a great question, and I appreciate that because it kind of leads into all of the different things that we're going to be talking about. So again, you have lots of different ways for this to display. You'll notice that I didn't change the sort order to put the Z up here at the top or whatever. And the reason I stopped doing that is because sometimes when you make a change like that, just for a minute or two, and then you change it back to the way that you like it, 5 or 10 minutes later, all of a sudden it will switch back to the reverse sort order. You're like, wait a minute, why is it doing that? So that's one of those things that can happen when you're doing cloud computing, when you're dealing with the computers, like in the Google server farms. If anything happens to the data, or if it's not sure what's going on, it will revert back to like 5 minutes ago. And so if your order was reversed just for a minute or two, and then 5 minutes later, after having changed it back to the original way that you had it ordered, in this case, alphanumeric order ascending, and all of a sudden it just switches to descending and the Z's appear, you're like, what the heck is going on? Sometimes Google does that. It will just go back and change things. And so sometimes folders will disappear that you had, moved it to a different location, and then they will reappear in that. Those are weird little anomalies that happen, and just know that they're going to happen. But basically, it works 99.9% of the time. It works the way that it's supposed to, but weird things can happen. And then you add to that the fact that new features can show up. You add to that to compound that fact with the fact that our administrator can then change or eliminate things or not allow you to do certain things. Google could be very confusing. And I will tell you that when I started teaching this 6 or 8 years ago now, when was it, 2016? That's a long time ago. Wow, 7 or 8 years ago. I thought, well, how hard can Google be? I had no idea. I was getting myself tricked all the time because things kept changing, and they do. And all of us have probably gone on YouTube at some point, and this is a really important fact to remember. And you've gone on YouTube to learn something. Maybe you're trying to fix some plumbing at your house or something that I've done. And so I look at a YouTube video. Maybe you're trying to learn how to use Drive better. Maybe you're trying to learn how to use Google Forms or something like that. If you're not careful, you might be learning how to use Google Forms 5 years ago. Is that going to be different than today? Yes, vastly. If you're not careful, you might be looking at a Google Drive video from 6 or 8 years ago. Is that going to be a different experience than today? 1,000%. It's almost unrecognizable. So if you're trying to learn something about Google, it doesn't matter that Billy Super Trainer or whatever from 10 years ago has 15 million views on how to use Google Drive. If that video is 8 years old, I guarantee you it's going to just confuse you because things are changing all the time. So what am I saying? If you are going to go try to get the latest, greatest training, try to find something that's at least less than a year ago. And even then, you're going to notice some things that are different because just these couple things right here have all been added in the last year and a half or so. So if I'm 2 years ago, you're not even going to see those things. And if I'm more than 6 months ago, you may not see these two places here as well, and including the spam thing. And so just keep that in mind, that this is an evolving product. And they do not contact you, Diana, and say, I'd like your permission to change your user interface for Drive. They just do it. And sometimes, like in the spam example with the banner that was up here in blue, they will tell you what's going on and say, hey, we've made this change, or this is new or different. Other times they won't, and you'll just have to infer that there's been a change. This new button up here, which we'll click on a little bit, at one time was blue. Another time it was red. Now it's white. Why? Maybe they changed the colors to let you know that when you click on it, there's something new inside or something like that. Hard to say, but changes are happening all the time and they don't always tell you. But 99 times out of 100 will say it's being done to make it easier for you. So back to where we are. We have our user interface here, and I strongly suggest that you have it by name in ascending order, at least to start. And the reason is simple. When I create a new folder, I'm going to do that here in just a minute, and it's called the Today's folder. I know it's going to end up in the T's down here, so it'll be easy to find because of this ordering. All right. And that's the same whether it's in list view, because it'll still be where it'll show up down here in the T section of my folders, or if it's in grid view, either one. Again, this is personal preference, but for the rest of today, I'm going to be using the grid view because I'm a visual learner and I think that's easier for me. All right, so let's talk about that first. We got to organize stuff. We talked about all these files that we have, and my gosh, we have tons of stuff that's shared with us. If you're new to the district and you just open up your shared with me, you could have 1,000 files in there or even folders. You're like, what the heck? Because if you're part of a department or something that's been using Google for a while and they share it with everyone in the department, as soon as you get your Sandy.net Google domain account based on your email address, then all those things are now shared with you, because that's how the share permissions are for everybody in that department, kind of a thing. And so you can have so much stuff here. So I'm going to scroll up here just a little bit to kind of get rid of the suggested things so it's a little bit easier to see. Let's see if I can control it a little bit better. There we go. So now it says folders, and we see folders here. So there's a couple ways to do this. And in my classes, whether it's Microsoft or Google, I talk about right click, left click. We're familiar with that. But then there's double click and there's triple click. And depending on where you are and when you do that, different things will happen. So let's just take a look here. This says new, so that's probably a good chance to make a new folder here. Where's that folder going to be made? It's in my drive. And I want it to be in my drive. I want it to be shown up right here. If I want to put it somewhere inside one of these folders, maybe I could click on something. So here's Google Classes. I'm just going to drill down with a double click here and watch what happens up here. Now we're in my drive, but specifically in the folder called Google Classes. And in my Google Classes folder, I have a number of additional folders that are here. And if I click on this one, 2019-2020 Google Class folder, happens to be red. All right. And now inside that folder, I have 3 additional folders. So the first thing I want you to remember, whatever you're trying to create a new file or a new folder, it depends on where you are. Because if I go here now and I do any of these things, I create a new blank document or a new spreadsheet or a slide or a form, or I upload a file from my computer, like one of these that are over here, or a folder. And why is it called uploading? Unlike your phone, when you go to a restaurant, it says, download our menu so you can order your food more quickly and not have to wait for anyone. You're taking the information out of the cloud onto your computer, or your, in this case, your handheld computer, AKA phone, and that's downloading. Why do they say uploading? Because remember, your drive exists in the cloud, those Google server farms. And so we want to take it off of the hard drive of our computer, whether, again, it's a file or a folder with files in it or more folders, and that's how we're doing it, and we're uploading it. Or if we want to create a new folder, all of these things are available here. And there's a more button. There's a whole bunch more apps that are available that you could then put in here. New documents, new slides, new whatever. And just know that if I make one of those, where's it going to end up? In this folder right here. So it's important to remember where you are when you do that. So I'm going to go back to my drive, and there's a couple ways to do it. I can click here, or I can just click right here. This is a navigation bar as well. And so now I know that I'm back in my drive because I recognize the folders with the Z1 at the end. But more importantly, it just says my drive. So if I go to make a new folder right now, it's going to show up in my drive, as opposed to before when we were drilled down like 3 folders deep in Google Classes. All right, so I said you could right click and left click on things. You can double click, triple click, and we're going to do that in several places. I'm just going to find an empty spot here. If I right click on lesson plans, I'm going to get a shortcut menu dealing with lesson plans. If I just go up here in this white space and I right click, check that out. It's down here at the bottom, but new folder, look familiar? File upload, folder upload, Google Docs, blank document, whatever. Where's it going to go? It's going to go right here in my drive. It's the exact same menu as this. So when you watch someone use a program that they are really good at and been using for a lot of time, they move very quickly. And the reason they're able to move quickly is because they know some of the shortcuts. Sometimes it's simply just right-clicking where you are, and you can get that exact same menu. Other times it might be using a keyboard shortcut. We might see some of that a little bit later. But
Yeah,
that's
this was my question then, that say
perfect.
you're in that blank space that you said, and I want to create a Google Doc. It's going to go into quote my drive, but it won't be in a folder. It'll be down there where it says files,
You
right?
are absolutely right.
So that's a problem. If I've noticed is I made a document because I was trying to hurry up, and I didn't put it in a place to start with like you just showed us. So it's somewhere, and unless I remember the name of it, or like sometimes I made something and it's helpful, but I'm like, oh my God, where did I even put it? I didn't put it anywhere. It's just sort of floating in a big
Right
pile
here
of
in your drive.
paperwork, like I'd stick it on my desk in a big pile up. So if at all possible, I know what you've done before is if you're just trying to create things, you might make a little file that says like new stuff or something to that effect that lets you just go really quickly until you know where to put it. So I'm just saying, like, there's just so much that goes on with these docs and people
You're
sharing, and
absolutely
sometimes
right.
I save a copy, and then all of a sudden it's like it's not in a folder yet. It's just sort of floating. Um, so I don't know what you recommend for organizing
Uh, I'm going to go
if
through
you
that.
don't put it in a place.
I'm going to go through that very specifically based on what you just said. And I just want to do a reminder here. If, like Diana and myself, we've been around for a couple of years, we all had file cabinets when we first started our work, or maybe in college or whatever. And file cabinets is where we stored everything. We have them in my house still, in my file cabinets. What go in there? Files. But remember, files, when we're talking about computers, these are files, a Google Doc, a Google spreadsheet, you know, a Microsoft Word, a Google form. Those are files, but these are the folders. So it's kind of a little bit confusing. And I know exactly what you're saying when you create a file, like for just putting stuff like, you know, important stuff file, you're really saying important stuff folder. And so, whereas, you know, you and I understand what we're saying, if someone, you know, hasn't been around for at least a couple of years, they may not even be aware that we used to call all those things files anyway. So let's just be real careful with what we're talking about, because again, we can upload a file or we can upload a folder. Those are two different things. And so if we look over here, this Excel file is a file. And over here, I've got my San Diego Unified School District folder with a bunch of other folders and files in it. So we'll just be real careful with that. The next thing is, you're right. If we're in Drive and we create anything new, whether it's a new Google Docs sheet or we upload a file or folder, it's going to end up just in Drive. And that means that if it's a folder, it'll end up somewhere in this list here in alphanumeric order. Again, this is why it's important to understand how things are ordered and try to maintain that so that at least we have a semblance, of idea of where something's going to end up. But again, if we've got 5,000, 1,500 different files down here, it's going to disappear. So let's talk about that. We just made something today. If we just made it today, we can go to recent and find it in the today thing. If it was last week or earlier this week, it's going to be right here. And if it's a couple, 3 weeks ago, we can find it there. And if we've only made or interacted with 10 or 15 different things, it won't take us long to go through that, especially if we know it was a Google spreadsheet. We just look for the icons, right? Like we know these are purple and those are forms. This is a spreadsheet. This is a PDF. Kind of hard for perhaps you to see on your screen what I'm looking at, but we could find it that way. We could do it by recent. The other option is to just search in Drive. And again, we'll look at that a little bit later, but actually we could just look at it now. You have the option to say, okay, well, it was something from Diana that she sent to me or whatever, or my boss, Derek, whatever, or maybe it was a document, maybe it was a PDF. And if I click on any of these, then look at that. It's going to give you only PDFs. And so you can kind of go through there and look, it's ordered now by most relevant. Can we change that? Last modified. So we have two different ways to kind of search through this. And this is reverse sort direction. Not sure why they have that in there. If we're trying to make most relevant or last modified, that would maybe that disappears when we change it. But we can kind of look through it that way, and we can kind of find it, by doing a search. And then of course we have it, we set it up for PDFs. And then if it's a specific person, we can, search for that person, or if it was modified in the last 7 days, 30 days. So this search is now on steroids, and it made it so much easier to be able to go find something. So I guess the full answer to your query is, when we are creating something, it's super important to know where it is and where you're going to put it. So if I want something to end up in my Google Classes folder, then I'm going to create it while I'm in my Google Classes folder, and it's going to be there. So I'm just going to do this really fast. I'm just going to grab this Excel file and drag it over here. And you kind of can't see that at the bottom of my screen, or maybe you can, it's behind my Zoom windows, but it says you can just drop that here. And I just want to point something out where I'm squiggling around here in circles. It says plus copy. It used to be a long time ago that if you took something off your desktop, you actually removed it. Now you put it in the cloud. It's not on your desktop of your computer anymore. But what it's telling you now is when I do that, it's going to upload it where? To Google Classes. There it is. And I still have the original copy on my hard drive. And why do I say hard drive? If you remember, or in case you're just joining us, there's my computer with the 4 generations a picture on it, and these are the files that exist on my desktop computer, not up in the cloud, until I drag one and put it in there. And where did it end up? It ended up in Google Classes. And so if I go back to my drive, and again, I can click here or I can click there, and there's a couple other ways to get back to drive. If I look down here, because I'm in alphanumeric ordering, I have to remember the name of that Excel file to find it, or I can just search for spreadsheets. And by the way, Excel and Google Sheets are both different kinds. And when I do that, I can have both kinds here. And if I scroll down far enough, I might see an Excel one, but again, that's by names. And so here's all the ones I started with dates. I keep all the class information from everybody that comes to a class, so that I have a list of people that I can send messages out to or whatever. So I have a lot that's in there. So that's not the best way to search for that. So I'm just going to go back to Drive. I'm going to reset it by hitting here. You can see the little things circle going around, just kind of resetting it. So maybe it's going to be recent. But the thing is, we all are doing 10 things at once. We have a lot on our plates. We got a lot going on, and we have to move quickly. And it may be that something that we created 2 weeks ago, now we need it. We're not sure where it is. With practice, you'll get better at search. If it's not too long ago, you'll be able to find it in recent, and so on and so forth. But the very best way is to actually put it somewhere where you know where it is. In this case, I just brought a file into my Google Classes folder, and there it is, because that's where I put it, and presumably there's a reason for that. So I'm going to go back to Drive, and we're just going to create a new folder. And because I'm in alphanumeric ordering, this folder is just for today. And so I'm going to go ahead and just right click, and then I left click on New Folder. And it's going to give me this thing saying, okay, what do you want to call it? And so that I know that it's one that I can throw away later, I'm just going to call it Today's Folder. And excuse my typing skills, I'm doing the finger pecking here. And I'm going to create it. And so because I'm in alphanumeric ordering, let's scroll up here a little bit. Let me get that so we can just see, yeah, man, all the folders. My Today's folder has showed up down here near the T's. If I want this to be in the prime position, because I'm in alphanumeric ordering, I can just right click on this now, and I can go to rename, and then just click here in the front and put a few dots. As long as it's more dots than what's up in this one here, it should go to the prime position. All right, and there it is. So now I'm in alphanumeric ordering. My Z is still at the end. In my Today's folder, because of the dots that I put in front of it, it's right there. If I want to change the color of it, I could do that too. So I could either click right here, and I can go find a way to, it used to be this menu was like 5 inches long, twice as long as what you see here, but they smartly squished it down a little bit with these little expand buttons, if you will, that allow you to do different things. And so under Organize is where we can find the color. But also notice that if I select here, I select there, or I just select nowhere, this changes up top here. And let me just scroll just a little bit more. There we go. So I pushed the suggestion thing up, and I basically scrolled down my desktop, if you will, my Google Drive, so that we just see folders. So again, if I click on the today's folder, I get this little menu right here that shows up. This just came out like a month or two ago. It started doing that, and they did it because of suggestions, and I kind of like the idea. So if I want to share it with someone, that's the icon. If I want to download it, what does that mean? If I have an Excel file or any kind of file in here that I want to then put on my computer, instead of uploading it to Drive, you can download it to your computer, and that's exactly what that is. If I want to move it to a different folder, throw it away. If I want to get a link to it, and this is my interest to you, Diana, because you're creating a folder and you want to have a link where other school psychologists or other people working in your department can get to, you can get a link. And then whenever you see an ellipsis, 3 dots, either vertical or horizontal, we call them just like more button. In this case, it says more actions. And if I look at it, then look, it's got another download right there. It's a shortcut menu. It's the same thing if I just right click here to get the same shortcut menu. That's what this ellipsis is. So they're always changing the way that you can access stuff and moving things around. And like all of a sudden you look up here, but you're like, oh, that's new. Oh, wait a minute. I recognize the share, I recognize the download, you know, the trash, the link, the move to somewhere else or whatever. And so I just made that red and I created it. It's right here in my drive. I know exactly where it is. And so I'm going to go ahead and just double click on this, drilling down in today's folder. So now that we see that we're in there, and there's nothing in there, of course, because we haven't put anything in here. And so it's telling us already that we can drop files in here, or we can use the new button. Why would we want to use the new button? Well, because we can upload files or upload folders, these things that are on my computer over here somewhere, or just create brand new different things. And we're going to do a couple of those different things. But again, I'm going to right click and it's going to do the same thing. And when we bring any of these in or create something new, where's it going to end up? In the today's folder. And this is really important to understand how this works so that we don't have to spend time going back and searching for things. We know some of the tools and they've gotten way better for finding that, recent probably being the best one. But it's really important that you kind of have your folders organized such that you know where things are. And so that makes it a little bit easier. So what we're going to do right now is I just want to upload a couple of files in here just so we can do this. I could cheat and just go straight to a folder and upload everything that's in that folder. And if I did that with this folder here, or I'm just going to click away, if I were to drag this in, I'll just tell you that there's probably 20 or 30 folders in here with probably a couple hundred different files, meaning Excel files, PDF files, things like that. I don't want all of those. But I'm just going to right click and I'm going to say upload a file. And now I've got this browser. This is on my PC, on my desktop, San Diego Unified Sick Leave. That's not what I'm looking for. So I can use this navigation bar to figure out, you know, what I'm looking for. I actually want to go back to desktop. I'm going to go to training materials, and then I go to my Google Drive Basics class. And there I've got a bunch of different files that I want. And so let's see, I want this Excel training workbook file. I want to bring that in, but I also want to bring in this Microsoft Word, famous author Word document. And you'll notice that it's only letting me click on one at a time. Well, here's the trick. You click on one and then the control key. You have it in a couple of places on your keyboard, but the easiest place to find it is the bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard. And sometimes it's just called CTRL, control. If I hold that down, now I can click on more than one file and you can see they're both selected. And I want a couple other ones. So where's my PDF here? Waiver form. This is one I just got off of the benefits department or something like that. So these are the 3 that I want to upload and put into whatever folder I have open. In this case, I've got my, we'll see in a second. I'll just go ahead and say open, boom. All right, and where's it going to go? Today's folder. And so it's telling us right down here, these are what's uploading. And now that they've completed, wow, things are working very quickly today. Because very quickly we got to see the little preview. And again, one of the reasons why I like the grid layout is because I can see things and because I'm more visual. I don't have to read the title up here, but we do have part of the title there. We've got, you know, all this information. So I just brought those in. So now what really just happened? Off of the hard drive of my computer, through my Google Chrome browser, across the internet to the Google server farms, in just a second or so, these files were uploaded from my computer into the cloud, and now they're there. So again, if my computer gets destroyed, I drop it in the pool or it just stops working or whatever, I can get a new computer. And then if I want to then put these files back here on my new computer, I can just right click on them and go to download. Or again, and this is kind of neat, when I just one click, this is why you have to double click to drill down on stuff, because the single click just allows you to select it. And when you select it, you get this little shortcut menu up here, as well as the rest of the information, or you can just right click on something. And then of course you can download it if you want to, and then put it back on your new computer. And again, because we have unlimited storage, I keep all kinds of stuff on my sandy.net Google domain account associated with my sandy.net email address. I keep everything there, because if anything ever happens to my computer, then I can just go access it really quick. All right, so things are happening pretty quick. I went back and forth, and I'm already seeing that I have a couple stuff here. And at this point, I want to just talk about what that means when we bring stuff in. So obviously, Microsoft and Google are competitors. I'm in Google Drive, in a Google product, and yet I have some Microsoft products that are here, all right? And I have an Adobe product, PDF. So Google allows you to do that. Not only that, Google will allow you, in the case of like this, any of these, it will allow you to interact with them, and without even turning it into a Google Doc in this case, but keeping it a Microsoft Word file, you can actually make some changes. And so here we are on the my Google Drive inside the Today's folder. And if I double click on this, watch what happens up here in my browser. It's opening up a new tab. And this happens very quickly, but it's basically saying, hey, we're going to open up your Word document in Google Docs. So we see the user interface. And if you spend any time at all, looking at Google, then yeah, this is your Docs home. Here's these drop-down menus or whatever, with all these different options of things that we can do. We have our quick access toolbar with all these different little things that we can do here to modify this. But this is 100% a Microsoft Word document. And let's state that one more time. In Google, you can change, modify, edit, format, reformat a Microsoft product, whether we're talking Excel or we're talking Microsoft Word. You can change stuff using the Google Docs tools, but make no mistake, this is a Microsoft Word document, and it will remain such until we change it. So just keep that in mind, that we can do that. I will tell you right now, if you want to start making changes to something that's a Microsoft Word document, you're better off turning it into a 100% Google Doc and getting rid of the Microsoft end of that. Because sometimes, because they are competitors, changes that you make right here in the Word document, maybe things disappear or they go sideways, or in the case of an Excel spreadsheet, the new formulas and programs you put in that are working for a day or two, they might stop working because you were using in that case, an example, an Excel spreadsheet, but doing it in Google Sheets. And so what Google suggests is, yeah, you can do some stuff. So I'm just going to make a quick change here. Nothing too big. I've just selected that real quick. I want to make it bold. Maybe I'll make it italicized. I'll change the font, or not the font, but the size a little bit. If I wanted to change the font, I could do that and all of that. That's okay. I can make some changes there. And it happens so quickly, you may not have seen it, but it says saving, saved, and then it goes away. This has now been changed at near the speed of light. These changes that I just made in my browser are now in this particular file called Famous Author Word Document, which happens to be a Microsoft Word document, has now been changed. All right. And it just happens that quick. But again, Google suggests that you switch it over into 100% of Google Doc. And it's real easy to do that. And so if we just go here to File, and just real quick, I'm going to go back to where we were. So all I did was double click on this Microsoft Word document called Famous Author Word Document. It just happens to be something we use in our Microsoft Word class, the introductory one. And then when I double clicked on this, it opened up a new tab in Google Docs and allowed us to make changes to this Microsoft one here. All right. But to change it to 100% Google Doc, all we have to do now is go to File, and this fourth one down, it says Save as a Google Doc. When I do this, watch what happens up here on my browser. Okay. Let's try that again. Doop, doop, ba-doo. Save as a Google Doc. It's opening up a new tab in my Google Chrome browser, and it looks exactly the same. Even the changes that we made in the Microsoft one, making this larger, bold, italicized, and we can tell that with the cursor there, we can see that these features are employed, and we can see the font size is bigger and all that. But then we look over here. Here's the first one. That's the Microsoft Word document. And then by simply going to File and Save as a Google Doc, and it's exactly the same way in Google Sheets if you have an Excel file. You click on that, it opens up a new tab, and there it is, and it looks exactly the same. All right, let's go back to my Today's folder. Things are happening quickly right now, so not the best time to use an object lesson, but usually when I click back on my Today's folder, I see those original 3. I don't see the new Google Docs version of it, because they look exactly the same. This one has the W for Microsoft Word. This one has just the blue box with white lines with Google Docs. It happened very quickly, but sometimes it takes a while. It could take 20 seconds. It could take 2 minutes. I've even seen it take 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Not very often, but it depends on traffic. Where traffic on the internet is in general, perhaps traffic at the Google server farms, but most likely it's the firewall that we have with the sandy.net Google domain that's going to slow us down. And we've all seen that happen in the district where things get slow. Right now, it's working very quickly. And that's a good thing. All right, so these two are now separate. If I make changes to the Google Docs version of this document, it will not affect anything on this Microsoft Word document, and vice versa. If I make some changes to this one, we won't see it over here. And so just to prove that point, I'm going to go to the Microsoft Word one, which I already have open here, and I can just make sure this, yep, there it is, there's the extension. And I'm just going to put my cursor right here real quick, and I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to go to Image, and I'm going to go to Search the Web, and I get this cool little thing over here, and my wife and I have the good fortune of living on some horse property, and we love horses, so we're going to say Enter. And we have all these beautiful things, and I'm just going to pick one that I picked before. How about this one? And so if I select that with one click, you'll notice down here at the bottom, I can't see it because my my Zoom features are blocking it, but there's a button there that basically says, okay, you've selected it, now click here, and then it will insert it wherever you had your cursor over here. Or remember, I said double click on things. Boom. And it's going to take a couple seconds. There it is. Happened very quick. So there's that horse picture. And again, we're in a Microsoft Word document. And if I wanted to, I could click on it and I could, change some things or whatever and use all these features up here to change the image in some way or whatever. That's great. But if I then click on the version that's a Google Doc, you'll notice there's no picture there. It could be that maybe it just has to be refreshed and, maybe it'll show up. But actually it doesn't, because these two, as I said before, are separate. And now look, wait a minute, Mr. J, where's that picture? So yay, at least I have a chance to do this. It's not there yet. It might take a couple seconds to show that horse picture, because again, I have it in grid view, so I can see the pictures of what things look like. Just like this form here, I can see the box with the check boxes and all that. And sometimes it takes a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. Sometimes you could just go up here to the refresh button and maybe that will do it, but sometimes it doesn't. It just takes a while. So yay, I finally found one where it's taken a couple of seconds to do it. But make no mistake, any changes you make in this one will not affect this one and vice versa. That's going to show up here in just a couple of minutes. I'll try one more time, see if I can force it. Not yet, but it will. So great. Thank you, Google. Thank you, Internet, for giving me a great object lesson. So because I said that these are two separate ones and any changes you make here will not affect the other one, the proof was to simply put a picture here in the Microsoft version of one and show that it's not going to show up over here. But it we still don't see it yet. So we're not even sure how that works. So keep that in mind, that things that you do that you've done 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, like I have, putting that picture in there, I know what it's supposed to do. And if it's not, there it is. The horses showed up. Yay. Thank you, horses. Thank you, Google. Just know that because one of the, let me just state it this way. One of the outcomes, I suppose, of not working off of the hard drive of your computer, as in the case of Microsoft Word or Excel. Those programs are part of your computer. They're on your hard drive. You're accessing it just from your hard drive. Anything Google is in the cloud, across the internet, through your browser, your internet connection. And it could be the Google server farms going slow. Not usually, they're way fast. Usually it's your internet connection, or in our case, if you're at a school or somewhere inside the Sandy.net Google domain, or the Sandy.net domain, anywhere inside the firewall, that could slow things down too, depending on the traffic that's going on. How many students, teachers, psychologists are working on the internet in the district networks? That will change it too. But there it is, it's now changed. And so this picture is never going to show up over here unless I were to now go back to here and then create a whole nother new one by saying save it as a Google Doc. And it will save it with this picture, but then I would have three. And so I don't confuse you, I'm not going to do that. So we're talking about bringing in files and folders and all of that stuff. So now I've got two that were identical as far as the name, but one has a picture on it. And so I want to keep things less confusing. So now I get to use my features here. Right click, new folder, and I'm going to call this one Microsoft. And you're going to see why all this is important in a little bit when we go back and check out the details of everything we've done today with this folder. So I've created a new folder. Folders always show up on top. They're going to show up where? How? Alphanumeric ordering by name, because that's the way that I choose to see things. And again, I strongly recommend you keep it that way so that things aren't changing order or position on your page. And just for fun, I'm going to right click. We all know that Microsoft is blue. So I'm going to do that, make it blue. And then guess what? It's real easy. Left click. This is my Word document. We know because the horses are there, but more importantly, this little W up here. I'm just going to drag it. Boom. And so it's saying, hey, you're going to be putting that in the Microsoft folder. Yep, that's what I want to do. Now it's out of the today's folder inside the Microsoft folder. But really, it's still in the today's folder, but organized inside the Microsoft folder. And if you doubt it, let's just double click real quick. There it is. So now we're in my drive, in the today's folder, in the Microsoft folder, and there it is. Now we can navigate up here and go back to the today's folder. So I'm going to open up this Excel file just real quick and do the exact same thing. So it's opening it up. It says we're going to open it up in Google Sheets. But again, there's that extension. It's 100% an Excel spreadsheet. And if I took the time, I could show you all the different worksheets that are associated with this or whatever. We're not going to spend time on that. But I am going to go over here to the file and go down to the fifth choice. It says save as a Google Sheet. And we see that it's going to open up a brand new one. And there is no extension. These two are totally separate files, even though at this moment they look identical. But this one is still an Excel file. Let's go back to the today's folder. And aha, so things have slowed down. So whatever was working fast before has slowed down because there is an extra file in here. We have it right here. It's the one that's 100% a Google Sheet because we created that. Oh, wrong, let's click here. And so it sometimes takes a while. And so again, if you're not aware of how Google works, through your browser at near the speed of light, little data packets go into that server farm and filtered through the Sandy.net Google domain, we may think I did it wrong because it didn't show up. Mr. J said all you had to do was click here, do that, and it's going to show up and it's not there. Why is it not showing up? Because sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes we can force it. Oh, that did it. The refresh thing made it happen. Sometimes you can click on that 100 times and it's just going to take a few minutes. Most likely it's because of the firewall. That's my best guess. So now that we have two, this one's an Excel spreadsheet, identical to this Google Sheets spreadsheet. And there they are. These are two separate files. And just real quick, I'm going to go to the Microsoft one. And I'm going to click right here in this cell. And I'm going to say Insert. And I'm going to go to Images, Image in Cell. No, I want it over the cell so it shows up bigger. I'm going to go to Google Images. I'm going to type in horses real fast because I know I won't get any inappropriate images that way. And this time we're going to do the mare with the colt. Double click, just do it the fast way. And it's going to show up saving, save to drive, just that fast. So again, you never have to click save. There's no save button up here like you would see in Excel or in Microsoft Word because it's automatically being saved as you deal with the the Google server farm, sending stuff back and forth. So there it is. So let's go back and take a look. Well, here's the Excel file. We still don't see the horses. These two are different. Because I added a horse picture to the Microsoft Excel version, it's not going to show up in this one ever because they're two separate ones. That's the most important thing to learn. And these two files are separate. And I can keep refreshing. Maybe the horses will show up. There it is. Didn't take too long. Okay, so we can see that these are two separate files, all inside the Today's folder, but I want to put this inside the Microsoft folder. All right, now it's gone. I moved it in there. I'm going to double click on Microsoft. And so inside my drive, I have the Today's folder that I made today. And then inside that, I have a Microsoft folder where I now have these Microsoft files. So, and again, this is really important that you think about this because it's going to save the example that Diana gave earlier, where you make something, you're in a hurry, where is it? You will only make this mistake a few times before you realize how powerful it is to really organize stuff, to know where it is. The last thing you want to do is go to your file cabinet at home that's got 4 big drawers, and your spouse says, oh, sure, that DMV, thing you're looking for, it's in one of the files in the filing cabinet. And if you don't know what folder it's in, good luck. It might take you forever because you've got 1,000 pieces of paper, different things, receipts, whatever, and it's hard to do it. So it's important to understand how you organize stuff. And in time, you get better and better at it. And so, yeah, I'll just say that you'll lose things a few times, but then that will motivate you to make things more organized. So I now want 2 folders in here, one for Excel, one for Word, because even though I only have one each and it's a piece of cake, what happens if a year from now I've got 50 of these, 100 of these, something like that in this particular folder? So again, I'm thinking about organizing, new folder. And this one I'm just going to call Excel. All right, and I'm going to say Excel, here we go. All right, and that's good. So I can put the Excel one in there. Let's make another one, new folder, and I'm going to call this one Word. And you get better over time of figuring out what to call things so that you can look at it. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to find Excel files in this one and Word files in that one because of what I called it. Just real quick, Excel is green, go down to organize, boom, just pick a green one. How about that one? Word is usually blue, so organize, go down to blue. So very quickly I can start to organize stuff. And then I can take this one and I can drop it in there. I can take this Excel file and I can drop it in there. And there you go. So what happens, I'm just going to drag this real quick over here, bringing in that other one, just made a copy, uploading, there it is. If I accidentally put something in an Excel one in the Word, what do I do now? So I can simply just double click on this. And now, whenever you see an ellipsis here, that just means that you're pretty deep in, and so it's kind of abbreviated, if you will. If you click on it, we now know that we're in my drive, in the Today's folder, in the Microsoft folder, and inside the Word folder, all inside one another. That's where we are. All right, and as you can see, I accidentally put this one into the Word folder. So there's a couple ways I can do this. I can start dragging it around and dropping it into places or whatever, but let's just take a look. Right click, we'll just take a look real quick. So organize, move. All right, let's try that. So it's going to say, okay, it's right now in the Word document. And look at this. This is something new. Now it's saying suggested. It's just suggesting some, and actually Excel's right there. Or maybe it's in starred. That's like Google's version of favorites. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. Or all locations or whatever. And then I can just sort of find it. Right now we're lucky because it's just right here in Excel. So I can either click here and then click move, or let's see what happens if I double click. Okay. It just did it. It moved it there. It's done. And it shows us the path of where it is. And so now if I go back to right here, my Microsoft folder, I've got Excel and Word. If I click on the Word one, it's just going to have, oh dear, there it is. So we just moved that from there. So now I'm wondering, is that because it's slow to organize it, or did I miss something and I put it in the wrong spot? So again, this is a perfect example of understanding how to use Google, but how things can move slowly on your screen. Let's go back to Microsoft and Excel, and there's only one folder there. So now I'm tempted to believe, and I truly don't know the answer to this because I thought I did it correctly, but maybe I just clicked on something too quickly. Maybe that double click didn't do what I wanted it to.
There was a button at the lower right that said move,
Right.
and it looked like you had to click on it to actually
So
finally move it.
usually you just select something and then click the move button. And I was trying something that works in other windows, like with the horses, just by double clicking on it. It
Yeah.
works everywhere in a Windows environment. And I thought that it would work there too, but it didn't. So let's try this again. So we're going to go down to, where is it? Organize, move. And it's going to say, all right, it's in Word. It can go to Excel. And I double clicked on it and it didn't work. Oh, look at this. I click there. Okay, so instead of double clicking, it's going to make you click on that one. And now it's gone from here. It would be the same of exactly your suggestion, Diane, of going down to that move button down below. But isn't that interesting? I'm not going to move this one, but I'm just going to pretend I'm going to move it so we can see that again. So normally, if I were just to select this one, I could double click on it and make it happen, but it's hard to see, but there's actually a darker grayish blue kind of ellipsis, like a little circle thing, elongated, whatever that's called, oval shape, I guess, thing around there. It's going to make you click on that. It's not going to work over here. It's specific to there and or after selecting it, doing move. So this is one of those nuanced, subtle feature differences where everywhere else, when I was adding the images of the horses or whatever, I could just double click on it and could bypass this and save myself some time. But I did it this time and it didn't work. So that's a great object lesson. This is kind of new, the way that they have this set up. And so you have to learn sometimes the hard way, like, oh my gosh, I can't find that Excel file. Where did it go? Fortunately, we looked at it right afterwards, so it was easy enough to figure out. But now if we go back to Microsoft in the Excel, we'll see that it actually got moved to there. So there's the other one. And why isn't it showing what it looks like, our little demo thing? Sometimes it just takes a little while. So again, it goes back to that thing where it just takes a little bit of time. So it's not showing the information like part of the spreadsheet or whatever. I don't know that there's a picture on it, so we're not going to see a picture, but it's not even giving us a sample of it. So I can't emphasize enough that be patient with all things Google, because it's sending data packets back and forth to a Google server farm. Where's the server farm where our stuff is located? I don't know. It might be Wisconsin. It could be in North Africa. It could be in both places. They're all over the world. And it just takes a while. But at near the speed of light, I mean, what, in a second, light can travel around the planet like 7 times or something. So obviously, speed of light is pretty fast, near the speed of light. That's how digital stuff moves in this case, the fiber optic medium that most of our stuff is moving at. So anyway, so let's just go back to where we were, and I can go to here. I'm just going to go back to Drive real quick. All right, so now I'm just going to go back to, oh, look, suggested. Here's some things that you're working at with Mr. J. You want any of these? So that's how the suggested thing works. And if I want to go to recent, there they are today. Now, all of these things that I was working on. So again, those are just a quick way to be able to get to everything you've been working on and be able to find it if you forget to put it somewhere that you want, assuming that it
Mr.
was.
J, question. I
I'm
know I have a
sorry,
lot
say
of
that again?
questions, but I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned that Google suggests that it's better to make changes to a Word doc when you're in like Google Docs. And so we previously, school psychs worked, did these long reports in Word. And I know that Google Docs is not as powerful as Word. And so that's what tripped us up. And I know in a few weeks you're going to do a Google Doc training. But what is the immediate benefit of working in Google Doc or Google Sheets versus the Microsoft? Like
That
you
is
said,
a great question. And by the
get
way,
right on it and
those
edit in
questions
that.
that is a great question. So the first part of what you addressed, just know that Microsoft Word is used by publications like newspapers, small regional newspapers or whatever. It's used by magazine editors and publishers or whatever. It is on order of 100, if not 1,000 times more powerful than Google Docs. Why is that? Google's one of the top, producing companies in the world. Certainly they have the capabilities of making it more powerful. And it really has to do with bandwidth. How when we see things are moving slow right now, it might take a few seconds. We're used to things happening as soon as we click on stuff. If they tried to make Google Docs 100 times more powerful to be that of, Microsoft Word, or maybe even 1,000 times more powerful, imagine how that could really slow the system down, because it's not happening on your computer's hard drive on your computer. It's all happening through the browser, through the internet. And there's all these variables, the speed of your internet, in our case, sandy.net, Google domain, that our firewall, all of these things that slows it down. So, so that's one thing to remember, is that they keep it working more simply just so that it works better. And so we think of this, our bandwidth, our ability to have things on the internet go faster. I mean, if you were around in 1998 and you were trying to download a picture, I mean, we're watching it download one line at a time. And bandwidth and computer speed and internet speed has gotten faster, and it gets faster all the time. It'll continue to get faster. And so that allows Google. So every year they add, 20, 30% more features. They can, because things are moving 20 or 30% faster. So that's one thing. And I lost it. What was the second part of your question? So it was,
So you said, well, that they suggest that we work in their format. And I wondered from the get-go, so you've already answered it, and mostly is that it's just super, it's going to be super slow.
If it were as
they tried to have it more powerful. But the problem that I know for us is some of the features that we've been able to access in Word, for example, are one right at our fingertips. Same with Excel spreadsheets. Like, I know how to manage them, and when I switch over to the Google format, it's not at my fingertips. There's things that don't exist that exist in Word, and then when I convert it, it throws off the formatting in Word because it doesn't exist in Google Docs.
Right.
So I guess we just need to know that ahead of time, knowing that maybe we're recreating a format if we're going to work out of Google for a team approach or what have you, and then just kind of put up with, you're losing some features, and maybe reformat your tables or something from the get-go, so that in the future and as you go on, you're going to have a new format with fewer, like, less sophisticated things you can do. But there's a trade-off that might be worth it.
Right. And here's the trade-off. And it's the fact that we can easily share a Google Doc with whomever we want. We can put it in folders in our drive and share that. We're going to be doing that in just a little bit. Share that drive folder with certain people, make certain people editors, other people just viewers. It's the share feature. And going back a few years before all things Google, we had the internet for the last 25 years or whatever. And this Google stuff's only been around for 12 or 14 years. We could share on the internet a Microsoft Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. The problem was someone would get it, put it on their computer, make some changes, and that's not going to change what's on the original Excel that was sent out. In other words, you're making a new Excel document. And if you have 5 people that you're working with, you could have 5 different Excel things. The benefit of Google, and what the reason that people are switching to it, is because if you and 25 other psychologists or 125 other psychologists have access to something, and people have permissions as editors or whatever to make some changes on that, it's making a change on a single spreadsheet or a single Google Doc or whatever the case may be, and it's changed for everyone. And you, as the owner, as we'll see when we go back to look at the history of what we did today, you can go back and see who made what change when, and switch back to that change before somebody messed it up or erase something or whatever. Because again, all of those steps, every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard is being recorded at the Google server farms, and thus the entire history of everything that's ever been done to that doc or that spreadsheet or your drive is being recorded there. And so you have lots of control over it. And that is the reason why most school districts like Clark County, let's see, what is it? I think it's called Clark County School District. It's the one my brother works for in Las Vegas anyway. They don't use Microsoft anymore. They went 100% Google. And
Yeah.
he boasts of how well his calendar and Gmail works together and all that, which we don't get to do. We have to transfer stuff. And like for me, for my boss, for him to know what classes I'm teaching, like this one right now, in fact, I just realized I forgot to do it. I usually put on my calendar in Outlook, Microsoft, that's shared with him the Zoom link so he can join in if he wants to see, what people are learning or what's going on or whatever. I forgot to do that for this one. Oops. Because you have to manually transfer that stuff. Whereas if I shared my Google Calendar, it's right there. All the information's on it, and it's seamless. So Google products are slower or not as featured as the Microsoft ones by necessity of bandwidth. But the reason we're all switching to it isn't because the tables are better or this, that, or whatever, or more formatting features. It's because of the ability to share and to be able to
Yeah.
control how it's shared. And then to be
Yeah.
able to have a history of that sharing and who did what and who made what changes, as we'll see a little bit later. So that's the benefit of Google. And I will tell you that it's going to catch up. So, for example, just go back to Microsoft Word. 20 years ago, I thought, hey, I'm a pretty good user of Microsoft Word. Look at all this stuff I can do. I would have rated myself as probably using 50% of, all the features I know. I'm pretty good at it. Wrong. 5 years went by. I was like, oh my gosh, I've learned 100 new things. So now I feel pretty good at it, but maybe there's things I still don't know about. And so fast forward a bunch of years, I mean, I have learned so much in Word because of, just create all kinds of stuff. My point is, um, I use some of those heavy formatting things called styles, where it's groups of formatting features, and I've created something for the training department for the purpose of our handbooks and job aids and things like that, that all the other ones are using, because in a single click, you can apply 50 formatting features to something you're writing. In other words, it speeds you up. There's nothing like that in Google. They're starting to have a couple little sort of things like that. But if I take one of my 100-page Microsoft Word introductory handbooks, and then I try to import it into Google Docs, as you pointed out earlier, everything goes sideways. None of the formatting works. All the words will be there. They may all be lined up on the left side of the page instead of in a table or whatever. But the formatting that Microsoft Word can do is on order of 100, if not 1,000 times more powerful than Google Docs. And so Google Docs is slowly catching up. Now there are styles, and you can modify and change to a reasonable degree those styles with multiple formats and stuff in Google Docs. But that's a new feature that came about just a couple years ago, and I choose not to use it because it's so not working very well compared to Word. I would never waste my time doing that. So as a school district, we are going that way. We still have Microsoft because of our networks. All of our schools are networked together. All of our major networks are all through Microsoft. We spend as a district millions of dollars a year for that privilege. As a result, we all get Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word. And so those of us that know how to use it, we use it because it's way faster and more capable for making handbooks and different things. But in reality, if you go back to just a school where you just have a list of students, or you have a list of teachers at a school site, or in your case, individuals that you're working with IEPs, all that stuff is just basic stuff that we do in Google Docs or in a spreadsheet, and those Google products will work just fine for that. But again, we have a problem when we take something more sophisticated from a Microsoft product and we import it, as you saw us do, and then certain things don't transfer well. And I will just tell you that would be things like checkboxes and tables and other highly formatted stuff. But as far as just words and numbers and stuff like that, it's really good. And so just restating all that very simply, most of us use spreadsheets and word processors on a very basic level to just do basic formatting, basic data entry, basic data retrieval and manipulation. And Google does fine with all those things. It's when you start trying to make a magazine, or in my case, a 100-page handbook with 12 different sections on it with different headers on each one. And then some of those things get lost in translation, trying to turn it into a Google Doc. But most of us, 90+% of us, are just using these programs to do the basics, and that's why Google works. But and I will tell you, just real quick as an aside, Microsoft said, "Oh my gosh, Google's taken away, some of our market share and all this. So, hey, we need to come up with something, we'll call it 365 or, OneDrive or whatever, and we'll have online versions of Microsoft Word and all that." And they did. And we'll make it so you can share it. So it's just a single Word document or a single spreadsheet. The same thing Google does, but nobody uses it because we all switched to Google, and then trying to go back and figure out the Microsoft one. I mean, I teach Microsoft, I teach Google. It's confusing, and it's might be as capable, but nobody in the district is using it. I have polled people a million times, and no one says, "Yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're just doing Google. Show us how to use the Google one," because Google came up with it first, the first one on the block, doing the cloud computing sharing thing. So even though Microsoft can do it, hardly anyone's using it because it's cumbersome, and Google's got it figured out better. And as you saw, they're always evolving and changing stuff to make it a little bit better, thus, paying attention to the new changes. So that's a great question. So we've talked about the abilities of what Google can do, but even though it's much less than the Microsoft products, it's 99% of what all of us need to do. And where it shines the most is the ability to share. And we're going to be heading into that area here in just a little bit. When we share this folder and things in it, and we change permissions so some can view, some can be editors and all that. And then when we look at the history of all of those things, we can see when someone adds something to a folder, or when someone takes something out, or when someone changes a document or whatever. We can see all those things. And then Google has it all recorded. And if we need to, we can go back before brand new employee X that just showed up and screwed up your file because they didn't know what they were doing and they were just a happy clicker and destroyed with something. You can go back to the date prior to them showing up and destroying that document, spreadsheet, whatever. And then you can change it back to the way it was because it exists in digital form throughout time history, all in the Google server farms. And that's how powerful those server farms are. Google's on this. So does that kind of, hopefully that explains, it's very detailed,
Yes.
important to understand.
Yeah, very helpful, very helpful. And, I know because I was trying to do our psych new hire handbook, and we've been trying to convert it to Google. And I think it doesn't make a lot of sense the way we formatted it from the beginning to try to recreate it in the same way. So that's a whole other project. But I think it's similar to what we tried to do as school psychologists to do multidisciplinary reports or what have you. Is we had our own kind of finesse for our reports, and it doesn't translate to Google Docs in the same way. So most people have tried to just reformat their psych reports if they're going to do one where they want to have people have access to it or do it online, through Google. So anyway, thank you.
And that's
very good explanation.
You could import, in this case, a handbook in Word into Docs, and then take those hours or days or however long it takes to kind of make it look decent again with the features that are available in Google Docs. And then once it's done, then there it is. But then if you have another one later, you have to do the same thing again. So again, that's why districts have switched all the way over to the others. And again, ours has not, because we're heavily invested in Microsoft and have been for decades. So, all right. So those are great questions, and I'm glad that we got to explore that because it helps us understand it. So again, I'm back in my drive. I know I'm there because I'm looking at this navigation bar or whatever. There's my today's folder. We understand why it's in the prime position. We already showed how to move things around. I'm going to drill down on it and go into it. And I'm going to see that I've got a Microsoft folder plus these 3 original ones. And I'm not going to take the time to do this one right here, but I'll just tell you that this particular form, I can just double click on it right now and it's going to open it up in preview. You'll notice I have a choice to open it in Google Docs, and I can, but right now it's just in preview. And you'll notice if I hit this, go back to this tab, I'm in my drive. And when I double clicked on this, unlike these other ones that came up in a new tab up here, because this is PDF, let's try that again, PDF, it's just showing me a preview. It didn't open up a new one. And if I want to actually open it up in Google Docs, I can, and then we can see what transfers over and all that. But I'll just tell you right now that when we turn it into a Google Doc, all of the words, letters, fonts, bold like it is down here, all that comes through perfectly. A few years ago when I started doing it, the table wouldn't show up. And now the table actually does show up. What disappears are the check boxes. And then things like these lines down here, it all kind of goes wonky. And instead of a half page, it just jumps to like part of it jumps to a second half page. And then if I wanted to, I could go back and go back and change a bunch of these things and make it look like the original. But basically, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. So I'm going to say open with Google Docs. I'm just do that real quick. So it's opened up a new tab. It's opening up in Google Docs, and it's not going to say Adobe because that original Adobe one is right here that we see in the preview. And by saying open with Google Docs, it opens it up in a Google Doc. There's all of our Docs features, right? Just like we were before. And there it is. So again, as I said, the table comes through, but if you remember, those check boxes aren't there. And we see that that's been moved over where it says last name, middle, initial, all that. If we go back to the original, we can see that that's kind of spread out. These were in line. We had our bold down here. There's another checkbox there. But when we put it in Google Docs, and again, it's getting better. It's got a table. But what happened like 6 or 8 years ago is everything inside this table was listed down the side of a page and no tables existed. Now at least Google's figured out how to make the table transfer over. That's cool. And if we look down here, here's that bold little section right there. Where the heck did employee signature and date go? There it is. The lines disappeared altogether. So did the check marks. So it's not there. So the question is, why would we ever want to take an Adobe, in this case, Adobe, that's a whole different company, competitor to Google. Why would we want to take an Adobe PDF and turn it into a Google Doc? Well, we have to understand what we want. If this is a form that we want to fill out, like, you know, print it, or I'm sorry, not print it. We want to electronically type in our last name, first name, and all that stuff and check the boxes or whatever, and then send it back. We can't do that here unless we have the ability to be able to go into Adobe through Adobe Acrobat Pro, about $149 a year, or other ones where it allows you to edit essentially and add things in here. But if let's just say that this is something that your department could use, but up here it says New York City School District, and we want to say San Diego Unified. You like what's here, and rather than just look at this and then type out a whole brand new one, we could open it up in Google Docs. And even though not everything transfers, most of it's there. So then all we'd have to do is change the name right there, and then we could start to use some of this information. So what I'm suggesting, I'm not suggesting stealing something. What I'm suggesting is you get ideas from other school districts that might work for, you know, us in some way, and maybe take some things out, add some different things. At least we can turn it into something that we can add. So I could come over here and I could grab all of this for whatever, and I could make this italicized or something, or make it bold or whatever, and change it the way that we want it, and we could make it our own. And then there we have, you know, a form that we can now use in our district. And so just so you understand, you cannot take something that's copyrighted and then use it by just changing the name from, you know, in this case, New York City Schools to San Diego Unified, and use it. That would be plagiarism or copyright infringement or something like that. But from what I understand, and I'm not an attorney, but in the digital realm, if you modify something by 10% or more in its digital form, changing more than just the name of the school district, but changing other stuff as well, 10% or more, it becomes a new digital item and is no longer subject to copyright infringement and other things like that. Yeah, you may still have gotten it from another school district, but you have the ability to take stuff and be able to put it into your own form. So keep that in mind. So what I'm suggesting is there's lots of school districts that have solved problems. Maybe there's a tiny little school district somewhere in California that sees something that San Diego Unified has done and says, hey, we could use an idea, something similar to that in our district. Well, if it's in PDF form, that they're looking at it, then they could put it in their Google Docs, and then they can go in and they can change, you know, stuff, and then modify it, change the way it looks, change the name of things, move things around, do all that, make it their own. And Google Docs allows us to do that. And so that's the benefit of all things Google, is it allows you to be able to work with the competitors' products, in this case, the PDF. So now we see that there's two. And so if I wanted to organize this, I would say new folder, and I would call it Adobe And I'm just going to put this down real quick. Adobe, there it is. And because it's in alphanumeric ordering, it pushed Microsoft over and now it's over there. And if I wanted to, I could go down to organize and make Adobe red because it's usually red, and there it is. I could just take this one and drag it over there. So just that quickly, we can see how we can organize stuff, and then we understand why things go where they do because of the ordering preferences that we choose. Then we have a better chance of keeping things where we want them to be. So anyway, that's just kind of the basics of all of that. But let's go back to my drive. And what I want to do right now is something you were talking about, using the greatest feature of share. And so I have the ellipsis here. Remember, that's a more button. If I just click on it one time, I see those features appear. So there's one chance to share. If I right click on it, there's another chance to share. And then if I click away, click here, click this one, same thing, there's another chance to share. So there's all these different ways to do it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to click on share. And so we have 3 different options for sharing. And so add people in groups. So I'm going to just type in, hopefully your name will show up here. There it is, Diana Peterson. So that'll make it easy. Okay, so I'm sharing the today's folder with you. And by default, it goes to editor. What other choices do I have? I could just make you a viewer, someone who can look at this folder and all the things inside, or make you a viewer and a commenter, so you get to look at all the things in this folder and everything inside, and then you can make a comment about it or whatever. Or I can make you an editor that says organize, add, and edits files. And that includes folders that are inside that folder, even though it says files. And then this is something that's fairly new, add expiration for viewer and commenter roles if I want to. So just make you a viewer for a week, a day, a month, something like that. You don't want people to have access to it for much longer. You have at least that option. We're going to leave it as editor for right now. And if I want to type in a message here, I can to you. And depending on how you have your settings set up for notifications coming, whether it's via email or your browser, and like I'm in my browser right now, you've seen this little pop-up window that says, hey, the latest video for whatever YouTube came in, or hey, Mr. J just sent you a today's folder link and you're an editor or something like that. Depending on how you have your notifications set up, you'll get the information. But again, I could put a message here if I want to. I don't want to. I'm just going to go ahead and say send. And a couple of things are going to happen. Notice over here that the little person shows up on the folder. You don't see that on the other folders. Here's one on Canvas. That just means that it's shared. It happens to be shared with you. So I'm going to drill down now. All right. So you'll notice that the Adobe folder and the Microsoft folder have the shared. And I'll tell you right now that everything inside the Today's folder, because I shared the Today's folder with you and made you an editor, everything inside you have editor abilities. If I had made you just a viewer for everything in the Today's folder, all the folders and all the files, then you'd only be able to view all of these. And just to prove it real quick, I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go to share. And I'm going to open that back up. And sure enough, there's me, I'm the owner, and then there's Diana Peterson, who's an editor. But let's look at the options now. And by the way, remember, I just clicked on one. I can start to change this. If I want to make you just a viewer of this one document and not an editor, I can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and say update. Update rule and paraphoto Diana. Okay, this is something new. So let's take a chance to read it, see what it says. Diana Peterson has access to waiver form statement of non-participation via a parent folder, today's folder. Changing the role of the parent folder will make permissions easier to manage. Aha. So it's saying today's folder, make it to a viewer. Oh, wow. So this is interesting. It used to be that it just automatically changed this one thing. But I'm seeing now that some people must have complained and said, hey, we wanted to just change everything all at once. So update the parent, that means the today's folder, not just this Adobe, little document that we have here. Or you could just update that one item, okay? That's interesting. So again, here you go. In real time, a new change by the wonderfully smart men and women engineers of Google. They've made this whole thing a different way. We're just going to do the item for right now. Or stated differently, this one here, you are just a viewer of what? Just the waiver form, just this one right here. All right. And if I want to save it, those pending changes, nothing happens until I push save. So now we're there. So again, if I go to this one and I go to share, you're going to see your name as an editor. But if I go to this one, let's click away from there, and I go to share, you're going to see that that you are just a viewer. So what are we talking about here? Because I shared the folder, everything inside that folder is going to be shared in the exact same way. I can then go back, if there's something that I don't want you to have any access to at all, or make you just a viewer, I can do that to individual ones. I can also do that. Let's go to the Microsoft one. So you can still see the share things are on there. So I'm going to go to, I'm just going to right click on this, and I'm going to go to share, and we're going to see your name. It's going to say editor, but I'm going to change it. But look at what the different changes are that are available. Let's see if I can move this. I can't scroll up my screen. I've got things blocking it from Zoom. Let's try that again. Let's go to share. Let's see if I can just, there it is. Thank you. It went up a little bit higher. Oh, and this drop down menu. So right now your editor. Okay, so now it's going behind that stuff. That's not helpful to me, but we can switch it to viewer, commenter, editor, can add an expiration date. I can make you the new owner of what? Just the Word folder. I can remove access. I can't see what else is down there, but I think that's the last one. Again, it's behind my Zoom stuff. I apologize for that. But so then I can make those changes. So whatever permissions you put on the main folder, everything inside has those exact same permissions. But you can go into any one of these, and in this case, this one, go to share, just like I did that one other Adobe one, and I can just say, make you a viewer. And again, this is new. Do I want to make you a viewer of everything, including the today's folder and everything inside? I could update the parent. I guess that what that does is it saves you a lot of time having to go back and do things individually, or have to go all the way back to the original folder and do it. But I'm just going to say update that one item and then say save. So what we're saying here is we have the ability to change how things are shared. This is still shared, but you are a viewer. This one, you are still an editor. So what's an editor? An editor can change the name of the folder. But what about the fact that mine is green and this one is blue or whatever? Can Diana change those? You can on your end. So just know if you're an editor, you can change the name of something that's shared, and everyone will see that new shared name. Well, because you're an editor, you have the rights to do that. But as far as colors of folders, that's your preference to make things easier for you. So the fact that mine's green here, Diana can go into hers and she can change this to XL for Psychologist or something. She can change the name of that. But if she changes the color of her folder to red or no color at all, mine will still stay green, because that's a personal preference. That's kind of a nuanced aspect of this. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but just kind of keep that in mind. So that's the main part of the today's folder, and being able to do the sharing and stuff that's inside of it. So there's different ways to say it, but basically everything inside the today's folder, if that's what I share, whatever permissions I give, it's going to make it all the same all the way in. But now we've seen that we can go in, and this waiver form is just view. The Microsoft folder and everything in it is just view, but all the rest of it, you're still an editor. But real quick, I want to go up here to the settings button. I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to click on settings. All right. So in the settings, we have three different categories: general, notifications, manage apps. Let's just take a look at general real quick. Here's how much storage I have. Again, this is where if we weren't in sandy.net domain, they would be saying, hey, you want to buy some more? But we don't see that because we have free storage. Show workspaces. That's something that's kind of new. I don't have any workspaces yet, but if that's checked, it's going to show them. Density, comfortable, cozy, compact. That's if you're using a touchscreen on a little tiny laptop, which most of us got issued from the district, something so tiny that we might not want to have it on compact. We want to have it on comfortable. So it's just the icons are spread out a little bit more or whatever. And it just comes by default that way, but we can make it more compact if we want. You remember when we took this Excel file that was actually an Excel, and we went and we said, hey, save it as a Google Sheet, and it opened up this one, or this famous author document or whatever. That was a Microsoft Word one. We went to File and we said save as a Google Doc, and it opened up a new one. Well, let's go back here. In settings, in general, it says convert uploads to docs editor format. That's a little bit confusing because it sounds like it's just for docs, but it's also sheets. It's also the rest of them. Every time you upload something to a new folder or whatever, in our case, the today's folder, it would have automatically switched it to a Google Doc, and you won't have the original if you click that. I prefer, I told you before, to save the original, because if anything happens to my hard drive or my computer, I can always download it back just by going to the cloud and doing it. But that's an option, and that's what that one means right there. So keep that in mind. Here's some other choices in settings, so show suggested files in my drive and shared drives. We've seen that at the top. If you don't want that to display, I can deselect that, click it, make the check mark go away, and then I won't see that. It won't be in my way anymore. Maybe that's the way you like it. Show suggested files and shared with me. Those are those two suggested banners going across there. Make priority my default home page. We haven't seen that on the other side just yet, but we have all these different options that are in there. But the one I wanted to show you right now is notifications. So if you want to show up on your browser, because I teach these classes, I don't want all this stuff popping through here and like interrupting my class. So I choose not to do that, but I can get it by email. That's how I prefer to do it, so that I can even in my emails, I actually have, where is it? Somewhere in here, I've got a thing. Oh, there it is. That's Google notifications or whatever. And if I have one, they're right there. And then I can say, oh, okay, that's when Diana shared this or that, whatever with me. Got nothing in there right now. But that's in notifications, so you can choose how to do that. This is just your app. Some of them are just by default, like Google Docs and other things that are there. Canvas is something we use in the district. That's something I recently added to my drive so I can move things back and forth. But all of that's in settings, and I'm going to go back to where we were. So I'm just going to go back to my drive, and just real quick right here. So this is storage. The only things that are going to take up space in your storage is anything that is not a Google product. If it's a Google Doc, if it's a Google Sheet, Google Form, it doesn't take up any space. But in this case, here's all my MP4s. These are videos of different trainings and stuff, and it takes up a lot of space, 1.22 gigabytes. And I can see it's in descending order, so the items get smaller, got shorter videos. Eventually I get down here to the Microsoft Word. All of these things are going to take up some space. And this is something new. I actually see that I have a form. I'm trying to remember why the form was taking up space. And it might have been something to do with the fact that it was shared with me or something else. I can't remember why. But typically, and this was a test thing that I had done, and it is shared with me, so it might be that. But usually if you've created a form or a Google slide or something like that, it's not going to take up storage space. And so those shouldn't be there. So again, that's a new change that they've changed somewhere, and I've got to have to figure out why that is changing there. And they didn't tell me that they were going to start doing that. So there's some subtle nuanced reason. And that can make you a little crazy in Google because you're constantly learning new things, but eventually you figure out why. But as you can see, by and large, 99% of all this stuff is things that are not products from Google that are taking up space that make up this 27.2 gigabytes. Let's take a look at the trash. So 2 years ago, you could have unlimited stuff in your trash, and some of us did. That was a place where we just stored stuff. Google realized it was taking up too much storage, so then they put this banner here. Items in trash will be deleted forever after 30 days. All right. And they're not kidding. So here's stuff from earlier this week. This is not the today's floor from today. It's from a different class that I threw away, and it's right there. And then last month, here's some other stuff, and that represents other things. If I want to, I can right click on it. I can restore this back to my drive if I need to, because I accidentally threw it away or something, or I can delete it forever. And by the way, forever is forever, and I can no longer get that back once it's gone. So now it's gone forever, and I can't get that back. But there's the ones from last month. There's the today's folder. That's a different today's folder. I promise you, I teach a lot of classes, so that's just a different one. So it says after 30 days, things will be deleted forever. If you have something that someone has shared with you and you deleted it, let's say it's Diana's folder or file or something that she shared with me, and I throw it in the trash, I threw away the icon for me, but I haven't thrown away Diana's. It's not going to disappear for Diana in 30 days. So there might be things in here from a couple of years ago that were shared with me that I threw away that will remain in here, but they're not mine. And I have the choice to click on it and then say restore and bring it back. Again, it doesn't affect the original owner. In this case, the example I gave was with Diana. A little bit confusing, but that's how the trash things work. Spam, this is something new. It says nothing in here in spam. So back at Drive, we saw all of these different files and things that we have. If we go to shared with me, everything in here has been shared with me from someone else. Yes, even some things from Diana Peterson. And so they're all here. Let's just say for fun, Diana was in one of those moods and she sent me the same file 25 times. That would be considered spam, I'm guessing, and it would end up in the spam folder. So it says files and spam won't appear anywhere else in Drive. So it removes it straight out of there. And then it's here for 30 days. What exactly is the criteria for spam? I could Google it right now and go to the Google support pages and it would tell me spam is identified as exactly the following, and we know all the different things of it. I haven't actually done that yet. At some point I might, but this is a brand new feature that showed up in just the last little while. So there it is. Now we've got a new feature that's on here. We're gonna have to figure it out. But that seems helpful. Again, I have nothing that's in there, but if someone keeps sending you the same thing over and over and over, it might show up here. And I would imagine there's gonna be a notification somewhere saying, hey, check your spam folder because there's something in there. Maybe it will change color or something. That would make sense. Starred, that's basically just your favorites. That's what Google calls it, because maybe Microsoft has a copyright on favorites, and so they just call it starred. Why would you want to do that? Let's go back to my Drive. And so let's say the today folder is really important. This is something that all of us in the psychology department have to use because, whatever, we're going to call it the today's folder. I can right click on it. And of all the things that I can do, this is in the way. So remember, I can always hit this ellipsis up here. So organize, there it is. I can add to starred. And so now I can go to the starred. And if I want to find something quickly, I don't have to look at all the other 50 folders I have and the thousands of files. I only have the starred stuff. And sure enough, it's in alphanumeric ordering and it's still in the grid layout. And so it's easy to find what I'm looking for in there. In this case, it's the today's folder. And I think this is from our last meeting. I must have put that in there and it's still in there. So that's what start is. And you can, let's see if we right click on it, organize, remove from start. So there's the opposite. We just take it out. So that's easy enough. Recent, we've already kind of poked around at that. It's just in order of the most recent to less recent going down the page. Shared with me. This is or anything, whether it's a folder or a file, is shared with you is going to be in here. Now, I will tell you that a few years ago, this was very confusing for people. It's still considered confusing, but someone would say, hey, I shared that whatever with you, a couple months ago, and go find it. And you go here to your shared thing, either in folders or files, and you can't find it anywhere. It doesn't exist because 4 or 5 years ago, you could right click on this stuff and you could move it out of the shared with me folder. Think of this as like a folder and into your Drive. And once you did that, it no longer existed over here. All right. And then people complained and said, hey, make it so we could put stuff in Drive, but it's still here in the shared with me. So if I can't remember where in Drive it is, I can find it in the shared with me. And I said, okay, that's fine. And so what they did is they changed that. So I have hundreds, if not 1,000 or more files here. And if I went and found one that was old enough, when I right clicked on it, I would see that, let's see, this thing is out of the way. So I'm going to use my features that I have here. So just clicking it one time, then I can go up here and organize. Okay, so there, move. I can't move this one away from the shared with me folder, if you will, and into Drive because this is newer than 4 or 5 years. Because the old rule is grandfathered in for the old stuff, because if you already moved it, you want it to stay there. But all the new stuff, it won't allow you to do that. So any one of these that I click on, if it's newer than 4 or 5 years, I can't move it. If I were to take the time to go down and find one and go to organize and move, and that was still dark, that would mean that I am allowed to move it because it's an older file, and chances are I can move it into somewhere else. So what is it they allow us to do? And I'm just going to pick one right here, 2020 staff and student. Again, I'm going to use this one so it's up a little bit higher. I'm going to go to organize, and I can't move it, but I can add a shortcut. So where am I going to add a shortcut to? So here's suggested. The algorithms decided that, oh, we were in the today's folder and made a word, all these different ones, or I can do the ones in favorites or all locations. So this means any folder, anywhere in my drive, all of that. Just for the sake of speed, I'm going to say, you know what, today's folder. I'm going to add a shortcut to the today's folder. And again, if I double click there, apparently it doesn't work. But if I go over here to add or this one, it will work once it's selected. All right, so you notice this is still here. It hasn't disappeared. And again, I can refresh the page to make sure it doesn't. Oh boy. Shared with me. Whereas I think it was this one right here. All right, so now if I go back to my drive and I go to the today's folder, and now I'm going to see this 2020 staff and student. The difference is, besides it saying PDF in the name, like all of these say what kind of file it is in the name, it has this little icon. That icon just means it's a shortcut. So if I go back to my drive, you will see that I have some folders that might be inside one of these other folders, inside of another folder, inside of somewhere else, but I want quick access to it, like my email addresses from the classes. So I made a shortcut show up in my drive. That's what the shortcut is. There could be other ones that have been shared with me that then I have made it simply a shortcut. So all this is a shortcut. So if I throw this one out, right click on it and throw it in the trash, I'm not throwing away this actual folder called ... fall 2023 email addresses. I'm just throwing away the shortcut. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. But that's what shortcuts are for. And it's for taking things out of shared with me and putting them somewhere else where you have access to it. So you don't have to go find it. It's shared with me. So again, some of these files, some of these folders could be inside other folders that I have by virtue of the shortcuts. But the originals, as of 4 or 5 years ago, are always going to remain in the shared with me. But again, if you have something older than 4 or 5 years, you still have the option to move it. Kind of a subtle nuanced thing that you just sort of figure out by clicking around, but there it is. Shared drives, what is that? Because I'm in the department of the trainers, we've got a couple different folders inside of our shared drive. Here's the training calendars. And then we used to have, when we were working at the IMC, we'd have to then schedule all of those different trainers using the computer labs that are there. And that's what was inside all of this. And it's all stored here in shared drives, which is different than shared with me. This is just for our department. This just happens to be the IT department for the trainers. Several departments have those. And if you want one, if you don't have it with your department, you have to go find the Google administrator for the district. And they're the ones that can make that change for you. That's not done through Google, it's done through our Google administrator. All right. And Drive, what's that? That's just another way to get to Drive. Same as clicking here, same as clicking there, same as clicking there. Let's just go real quick to workspaces because I'm trying to move through some of these things just so we can see them. This is something new. Create your own personal workspace. Get back to files you're currently working on so you can pick up right where you left off. Create a workspace. Not sure exactly how that works. If I wanted to, I could go here and Google, how does workspaces work in Google Drive? And it will take you to the Google support pages. There would be little videos, little step-by-step instructions, little screen things, screenshots that will show you how to use that. Google's really good at having all that stuff in the Google support pages. And all you have to do is Google it, tell it what you're looking for. But that's something new that they added. Activity, something you're all caught up. Files with recent comments or requests that you need your attention. Okay, that's pretty cool. So if somebody's is a viewer and a commenter on something and they make a comment, you're not going to know it until you open up that actual document to see the comments. But now Google's created a new space where apparently that will show up. And so it'll say, hey, Diana made a comment on something and you need to look at it. Okay, then you can click on it and be able to use that. So again, that's something that's been added very recently, like in the last week or 3, maybe even less. And it's going to make it easier for you to keep tabs on, comments and different things that it feels you need your attention. Priority came out about 12, 18 months ago or whatever. It has a little suggested thing. What is this? This is just a different way of organizing your desktop So you could have like one folder for just the psychologist. You could have one folder for, maybe working with, I don't know, other district staff or something like that, teachers or something like that. So you could have different folders. So what are we really talking about? Just different ways to organize it. So here's all the stuff that's shared with me. Well, I have a shared drive. That's just another folder that allows us trainers to have stuff where we need it. I could even right click on one of these and put it in my start so I can access it there. That's all these are, the priority things, allowing you to organize stuff differently. But by default, you end up with just your user interface that looks just like this. It comes with the suggested on top. If I want to, I can go to settings and get rid of suggested, and it won't be there anymore. So it'll just start with folders and all of that. But this is the way that it's set up to do that. And then, as I pointed out, these things are new and you're trying to find something. By type, what kind of a document you're looking for? What do you want to see here to look for something? Is it by a certain person? Whatever. Is it modified in the last 7 days? Whatever. And so different ways to display what's going on here. That's kind of what these things are here. Starred is all the ones we said starred. We already learned what all these different things are. So they're coming up with new ways to see all this stuff and see what's represented here. And then search is basically all those on steroid. If I click here or click here, it's the exact same thing. And so we can see what type is it. All the different types that are there. PDFs, is it a forms? Is it a slide? Is it a document? What is it? Then owner, who's the owner? Is it owned by me, not by me? Specific person, maybe Diana owns it or something. If you can't remember the name of a file, maybe it just has these words in it, or you remember 1 or 2 words of the name of it or whatever. Where is it? Do you happen to know that it's in your drive? Is it, you don't have any ideas? It was shared with me. Is it in some other location, maybe a different folder and you're trying to search or whatever? So all of these things have been added in the last year or two to make it easier for you to find things modified. These are just parameters for searching. It allows you to search very easy. We kind of looked at that a little bit before. So this is all the basics of the interface. If we have questions and we want to go to the Google support pages and find out more information, we can click there. We already went to settings. Look at that. That's the the apps waffle, or just the grid, whatever you want to call it. We talked about this. This is brand new as of a day or 3 ago, because I did not see that just a day or 3 ago. And again, it just makes it easier to figure out which view you're in and how to change it. And that's awesome. So the last thing that's important that I want to show you here, and that's the most powerful, is, and remember when you click on something, we have new menu items here. And those items are the exact same ones as if you right click on it. We can see all those different ones. Or just clicking away from it, click the ellipsis, get the same thing. So right click, ellipsis, just a single left click on it to open it up and see all those different options, just different ways to do it. And I'm glad they added that there, because oftentimes this menu is stuffed way down here below my my Zoom stuff that you can't see, but I've got my Zoom features bar down there, and it always gets out of the way. All right, so when we select something, we can see that it changes color. And one of the options was this thing called file information, where we could see details or activity, or look, now we could even search right there. That's pretty cool. All within this files information. So again, this whole thing here a month or 2 ago was changed to where it's much shorter, but it has these little extra things that you can do that pop out on the side. It's the same thing as if just selecting one of these and going up here to this button here, view details. So I'm going to do that right now. But before I do it, I want to expand this so it's covering up everything. So here we go. Expand. That's selected. It's dark so I can see it. And I'm going to say here. So now it's going to say today's folder. It's showing it's read. It's showing it's shared. It's even showing who it's shared with. That's the today's folder. This is the information and about the details. We see this little elevator bar here, so we know there's more. So it says, okay, it's a Google Drive folder. Sure enough, it's in Drive. The owner is me. I was modified on January 5th by me, created on that, download permissions, viewers can download, whatever, all this stuff. This is all the details about this, and it shows everyone who it's shared with. And let's see. Trying to see where there's a place. Oh, manage access. So if I go here, this is where I can add more people. or I could change Diana from an editor to a viewer, or make Diana the owner of this and do all that. I can do it right there. That's in the details part. There's activity. Let's take a look at this. And this is important for your department, especially if you have several people that are working with you and you have to kind of control what's being added to a folder or taken out, or different things like that. So because this is across the internet through the browser, the Google Chrome browser, to the Google server farms, and I said that every click of the mouse, every stroke of the keyboard is being recorded at the Google server farms at near the speed of light, they're able to give you details down to the minute. They can actually do it to the second, but they didn't put that there. So it says and it goes backwards from what was most recent. So 10:43, 10 minutes ago, I created and shared an item in the today's folder. And it was this. You remember I took this from the shared with me, and I made a shortcut and I put it in the today's folder. There it is. And guess what? It even shows that Diana is an editor of that. Why is she? Because she already had the rights to everything in the Today folder as an editor. So we go back to 10:29. It says I shared 2 items. Oh, they were already shared with Diana, but she was an editor, and I switched it to where she was now just a viewer. So if I want to change those permissions, I should be able to click on that and change it or whatever right there. But there's those. And by the way, if I want to go see that document, I can click on it. And look what it does. It takes me straight to that document. That's pretty cool. Let's go back to where we were. So that's one of the benefits of this thing. So I'm just going to go back. I shared 5 items and made Diana an editor. And at 10:23, I did this and I did that, and I made a new folder. And I stuck that waiver PDF form in the Adobe one. And so everything that I did today, from sharing to making new folders, to putting things in new folders or new folders inside other folders, whatever, it tells me the date of when it happened, the time that it happened, all the way back to the very beginning when we get down there. So in my drive, I created a today's folder, and then I made, at 9:31 a.m. on January 5th, I added Diana Peterson as an editor. And then you kind of go back up, 9:37, 9:41, 9:43. It's all there. And so I'm going to click out of that for right now. I'm going to go back to Google Classes, and then I'm going to go to here, and we're going to go to details, and it's going to show, the same information when it was created back in 2018, March 8th to be exact. And if I go to activity, that activity is going to go back to its creation. And so if I go down this way, it's going to take a couple seconds, load up more, a couple seconds, load up more, and a couple seconds, load up more. And so now we're back to 2021. What I'm sharing with you is this activity log, if you will, is very precise, down to minutes and days and years. And if at any time, as long as it hasn't been thrown away, I want to see something. Let's see if I can click on it, open it up. So apparently that wasn't thrown away. So this is back from whatever that said, 2021. There's one of the in this case, it's an actual Microsoft file, because we could see that the thing is right there. And all I had to do was click on that. That's pretty cool. And that was back on October 28th, 2021. I renamed something. So again, if you see the show all, it's just, these are the people it's shared with. If I show all, it's just going to show all of the people I'm training. So that would have been everybody that was in my training class, including my pretend trainers, John Lennon, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, and presumably Paul was misbehaving. So I made sure that he was no longer part of that access. Show less, make it smaller. So that's pretty cool. And it just keeps getting smaller and smaller because we keep going down further and further. And eventually we'll get back to the very beginning when it was created in 2018. So why am I showing this to you? And I saved it to the end just so we could see the today's folder. So I click on that, and now it's switching to the activity of the today's folder. I'm showing you this because be thinking, Diana, and everyone else in your department, that that you can use this to see when people have uploaded a file or a folder into your particular folder, or if they've changed something or done some different things or whatever. All of it's being logged, and you can keep control over it in your activity, which again is simply just select it once and click this eye here, or select it one time, hit the ellipsis that shows up. And then you can go down to the information things, details, or straight to activities, or details, whichever one you're interested in, and get all of that information. That's pretty cool and pretty powerful. So All right, we've talked about a ton of stuff. Just to recap, everything in Google is changing all the time. And you're going to question yourself as you're learning it. Okay, am I remembering this right, or is something new? Chances are it's something new. The other thing is give it time to figure things out, because even in the today's folder, when I went and took the Microsoft versions and made the Google counterparts to it, it took a little bit of time for it to show up. So again, those packets of data, ones and zeros are all they are, going back and forth at near the speed of light to the Google server farms or whatever. Plus, it has to go through, filter through our firewall. Sometimes it takes a while. As we saw the picture of the horse take some time on one, and the other one it went very quickly. So just know that you have to be patient with this stuff and kind of trust what you're doing, but know that sometimes it takes a few minutes for changes to be affected. New features are going to show up all the time. Just kind of, the more you learn, and if you learn everything that's on here 100%, it's going to be real easy to know when something's new. A lot of times, if it's a significant thing, there'll be a banner across there. Like for about a month and a half, it said, please note that your trash can is only going to hold on to items for 30 days. And it told us that for about a month and a half until finally the banner disappeared, and it just didn't give us a banner anymore telling us that. We just had to remember that. And then it was a few months later that I noticed I still had stuff that was in there in the trash can after 30 days. And then I had to figure out through the nuance of it all that those were items that were shared with me. And even though I threw away my copy or iconographic representation, I threw away that, but I did not throw away whoever had shared it with me. An example I gave was Diana shared something with me, and I throw away my version of it. She still has hers, and I could still go to the trash 3 months later, right click on it, restore it, and bring it back to whatever folder it was in before. So there we have a very thorough overview of how all of these different things work. Are there more things that we haven't really touched on? Sure. Are there nuances to how things work? Absolutely. Are those changes, or can there be changes to those nuances? Yes, and it happens all the time. So the more you learn, the easier it is to learn the new things, and the easier it is to figure out what it is that they've changed. Sometimes they change things and give you a banner. Sometimes they don't. So if we go to like this one here, if I drop down, I might see, there we go. This is something new, and it's just telling us it's new. If we want to learn how to use it, we just go to the Google support pages or the Google search and just say how to use timeline in Google Sheets, and it will give us all the details you could ever want to the nth degree, explaining how to use that. And so again, whenever there's something new, they'll put that in there. That's always helpful, but they don't always tell you everything, and you'll have to figure it out by nuance. Or ask someone like me who spent way too many hours trying to figure all this out. And as you've seen today, I could still get tripped up just because I know that they can change stuff very quickly and without telling you. And you think you understand 100%, and now you're bumped back down to 97% or whatever it may be. But take heart, they're making the changes to make things easier and better for you. Google Docs, Google Sheets, all the rest of them are going to continue to get more features. Eventually, they'll be as powerful as Microsoft Word or Excel is today, but then presumably Microsoft Word and Excel at that time would then be 100 times more powerful, and they're still playing catch up. And it has to do with bandwidth and the fact that we're doing internet cloud computing as opposed to working off of the hard drive of our computer. So now I'll just say that's the end of the presentation for Drive. Thank you everybody for coming today. If you have questions, we can actually go to that and have any open-ended questions you want. I'm available for as long as you want. Diana pointed out earlier today that we're going to have a time next week where we can do another deep dive. So after you've played with some things and maybe come up with new questions over the next few days, we'll have a chance to go over that. But if there's something right now that you're interested in, we can do that, and that doesn't have to be a part of the recording. So just want to say thank you so much for coming today and for your patience and having us kind of click our way through some of the new features that we have for us today. And hopefully that's giving you a better foundation to help you move forward. So thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.